SpaceX-14 launch, followed by berthing a couple of days after. So for a couple of weeks there, we'll be doing a dual berth cargo visiting vehicle configuration, which typically, you know, again, that presents challenges, but challenges we've dealt with before, and again, I don't see anything insurmountable there. So we just have to make sure we get all that work done. So don't see any challenges with that. When it comes to December, we're going to be trying to finish up the SpaceX-13 mission by the end of December, and about the middle of the month is when we're going to do a crew rotation. So that'll be something we'll deal with in the middle of December, when we'll see Randy and Paolo come home, and then a few days later we'll welcome the next crew aboard. So anyway, we won't be down very long, and we'll only be down 3 or 4 days from the standpoint of a smaller crew, and we'll jump back up to 6 pretty quick in the middle of December. The first domino in this whole plan that's got to fall is this set of triple EBAs that we're here to talk about today. Our primary objective, if you look at the EBAs as a whole, is to make sure that we get the SSRMS recovered and fully functional. And as most of you know, the SSRMS played a critical role in the assembly of station, but I would tell you it's playing just as critical a role today in the overall execution of the program, when it comes to science, when it comes to inspections, when it comes to putting visiting vehicles on station. It's just an absolute critical asset that our Canadian partners have contributed. So anyway, we're very excited about getting out and getting it fully recovered and functional. And our original plan going out for this EVA was actually to do a different end of the arm. We were going to go out and change out a different end of the arm. This was a concern that was brought to us a couple of months ago by our Canadian partners after looking at some imagery of one end of the arm, and they noticed what I'll call kind of more of a wear and tear type of concern, and they brought the recommendation that it would probably be good to change out the latching end effector to again make them more robust going forward. As a program, we all agreed to that, and we found a home for it in this set of triple EVAs that we're doing here. Subsequent to that, during a robotic operation on orbit, we had an issue with the other end of the arm, and that particular issue, once we looked at it a little bit closer, gave us more cause for concern going forward. And so we made the decision as a program here several weeks ago to just change the operation to say, instead of changing out the original lead, we'll go to the other end and change out the one that gives us more cause for concern. And the one that we originally were planning to change out, we'll change that out after the first of the year. Again, that's more of a wear and tear issue, and we have some runway to go do that. So we've got a couple EVAs we'll do in the January, February timeframe, and we'll go swap out that particular lead. But first and foremost, we want to swap out the lead that again gives us the highest concern, the problem that popped his head up here a few weeks ago, and the team is ready to go do that. And so I don't anticipate any issues with that going forward into the EVA. That'll be our first EVA. As far as the rest of the things, I kind of put them in the cats and dogs sort of category. You're going to hear the guys and gals talk about changing out cameras. Those are cameras that have kind of given us problems over the last few years, but again, that's something that we need to go do, and it's a good opportunity to go do it, and we'll go get that work behind us. As far as the readiness to do the EVAs, suits are in good shape. We're not working anything from a program standpoint on the suits themselves. We think we got a couple of good, healthy suits, and we're ready to go. Crew and Judd and the team will talk to you about that. The crew's been working for a while now, leaning in this direction with their studies and procedure reviews and working with the ground and all that. On Wednesday, we'll do a mission management team meeting, and barring any late-breaking issues, I anticipate will be a unanimous go. So everything looking real good up to this point, and I'll toss it to Judd and let him talk to you about the specifics of the EBA.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm Judd Freeling. I'm the lead flight director for the second two spacewalks in this series. The first spacewalk will be led by Tony Sacacci. And that first spacewalk will be this Thursday, October the 5th, starting as scheduled 7:10 a.m. Central Time egress from the Quest airlock. The crew going outside will consist of NASA astronaut Randy Bresnik and Mark Vandehei. This will be Randy's third EVA, and it'll be Mark's first. On the ground, we'll have IV Capcom NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins. And then on board helping out Randy and Mark will be NASA astronaut Joe Acaba and European Space Agency astronaut Paolo Nespoli. They'll be helping Randy and Mark suit up there. Additionally, Paolo will be operating the Canadarm2 during that spacewalk. As Kenny mentioned, the major objective of this first spacewalk is to swap out the degraded latching end effector, or LEA, on the Canadarm2 with an identical unit that's currently located on the mobile transporter. Part of the reasoning behind changing this one out is on August 22nd, 23rd timeframe, when we were attempting to walk off the Canadarm2 to the mobile transporter. The latches on that LEA were that enable all the power and data to go to the corresponding grapple fixture. Those latches stalled out. They require a little bit more force than normal to extend. So that's why we're changing that out first. The second EVA, or the second spacewalk in the series, will be conducted Tuesday, October 10th. Again, with a 7:10 a.m. planned egress time from the Quest airlock. We'll have the same NASA astronauts going outside, Randy and Mark. This will be Randy's fourth EVA and then Mark's second. On the ground, we'll have our IVA Capcom will be Kate Rubens, NASA astronaut, and also on board, Joe and
idea how many evacuees we have. We do not know how many structures have been affected, and the reason is this is not a fire that we are facing from a firefighting standpoint right now. This remains life safety, same as yesterday. We are working on evacuations, making sure that the scenes are secure and that people are staying away from the danger zone and allowing our law enforcement to access those areas. At this time, we will go into speaking about the updates on each particular fire zone. Supervisor Pedroza will speak on the Atlas Peak fire.
Good morning, everyone. Alfredo Pedroza, County Supervisor for the 4th District. The Atlas Peak fire, as of 5:45 this morning, we had 25,000 acres burned. No reported of any containment at this point. As Supervisor Ramos and other electeds have alluded, it's about making sure people are safe. Safety is our #1 concern right now. These has caused some evacuations. On Atlas Peak Road, that is a mandatory evacuation. Also on Monticello Road, Atlas Peak to Circle Oaks, Soda Canyon Road, the avenues, Vichy, Hagen, Olive Hill, Monticello Parks, Silverado Country Club, Wooden Valley Road, Coombsville Road to Wild Horse Valley, Silverado Trail between Trancas and Sage Canyon between Silverado Trail and Turtle Rock, Capel Valley from Turtle Rock to Muscovite Corners. Now, a lot of folks have asked where are folks going to. So for our district, the evacuation centers are the Napa Valley College Gym. That address is 2277 Napa Valley Highway in Napa. And we also have Crosswalk Church, which is at 2590 First Street. There was a lot of impact in our district. I had a chance to visit our district yesterday, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe, to make sure that you guys and gals can go back to your district. But our concern right now is your priority in making sure Napa County is safe. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Diane Dillon. I'm supervisor for the upper half of Napa County, which includes the source of the Tubbs fire near Calistoga. The good news is that Calistoga, the city of Calistoga, is safe. Power was restored there yesterday afternoon. The Tubbs fire itself has not increased in size that we know of, but Petrified Forest Road is still closed. The road that leads over to Calistoga, Highway 128, is still closed. The road that goes from Calistoga up to Knights Valley. So the main thing we want to emphasize, we have a voluntary evacuation north of Tubbs Lane, but please stay out of the evacuation areas if you can, and we're going to be going on the radio. Chair Ramos will talk about that in a moment, to be able to communicate the message out more, because so many people do not have, as Senator Dodd said, access to the cell service, or and in my case, and no power still in where I live in St. Helena. So thank you for getting the message out as much as you can.
And I'm Brad Wagenknecht. I'm supervisor from the 1st District, and I'm going to talk about the Partridge fire. It's the little brother of these other 2 big fires. We have about 1,000 acres, but still zero containment. The Carneros mandatory evacuations are Old Sonoma Road, Buman to Buman, Buman to Henry, Henry to Dealey, Duhigg at Las Amigas, and Las Amigas at Cuttings Wharf. And the Partridge Road mandatory evacuations are Partridge. We had last night 30 people staying at the Crosswalk Church and 100 people staying at the Napa Valley College.
We understand and we are very concerned that loved ones are looking for their family, they're looking for their friends, and certainly communication has been a struggle to achieve locating family. We want to encourage people, if you are looking for information on a loved one, the best place to look is www.safeandwell.org. Shelters are registering evacuees at this time. For confidentiality reasons, we are not able to release those names. That has to be done through that website, but we encourage people at the shelter to register. We encourage other evacuees to register. Even if you haven't been evacuated, go ahead, register, so that that communication is opened with your loved ones and people that may be looking for you. We are working on establishing public access points of registration, and we'll be working with our library director on if we are going to have the capacity to open up our libraries, to have that be an additional source of a communication. At the present time, Comcast has opened a public Wi-Fi service in the following zip codes: 95401, 95403, 95404, 95405, 94558, 94559, 94903. These complimentary sessions, we're very grateful to Comcast, will be open through Friday, October 13th. Once a hotspot selected is going to be, once a hotspot select Xfinity Wi-Fi network, and then you can launch your browser from it, it will take you into the registration for the hotspot once you are on that location. So certainly communication is key. At this time, we will go into some particulars of safety, and I would like to introduce Sheriff John Robertson.
Hi, John Robertson, Napa County Sheriff Coroner. It's with sorrow that I tell you today that we have confirmed 2 fatalities. Charles and Sarah Rippey, ages 100 and 98, were unable to be evacuated from the 100 block of Westgate in Napa County. Our thoughts are certainly with the family at this time. Thank you.
As of now, there are 27,000 people without power in Napa. After my tour of some of the fire zones yesterday, you can see why. A lot of down power lines. And when I went home last night to check with my family after a long day, there's people at home without power but without Wi-Fi, and they just don't know what's happening, especially if they're near a fire zone or not. So PG&E is going to be working today on restoring power for those areas outside the fire zones, and then PG&E's got to work with CAL FIRE on the other areas restoring power fully to Napa. So that's in progress. Another piece of safety is people wanting to get home. We understand people want to get home just to check on their house or to get home and get back to their closet full of clothes and take a shower. We get that. But it's super important right now that everybody comply with evacuation orders for a lot of good reasons. And to help me explain that, Chief Bierman. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Bierman. I'm the Deputy Incident Commander with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3, as well as the Napa County Fire Chief. Currently, in the evacuation areas, we have a lot of devastation that's gone on. And as discussed here today, there are a lot of people, as we can understand, that want to get back in there. Our number one priority is the safety. It's the safety of the public and the people that are evacuated, the safety of our first responders. Before we can get anyone back into these areas, there's a process to ensure that safety, to repopulate. It's typical this time of an incident in some areas where we don't see smoke that understandably people want to get back in. However, it's not safe to do that until we can secure the utilities, the gas lines, ensure the trees aren't going to fall down on top of someone. So that area of repopulation is a process that we're already starting to work on. However, it is not as easy as one would hope to ensure that safety. So I ask that people please be patient as we work in these areas. The fires are still out there. They are still actively growing. We will be updating acreage and containment daily as we get that information. Resources still continue to be limited. We have folks on the fire line starting their third shift right now that have not been relieved because there's folks not available to come in with so many fires in the area. We are having to share resources as there are many priorities in the communities that are being affected by this. So everyone is working hard with not only trying to get people back into the areas that fire has gone through, but also the areas that still continue to have fire. We are still having active fire in all locations. We are unfortunately continuing to experience additional structure loss that happens due to the fire growth. The winds yesterday went from a northern wind to a southwestern wind in the evening and pushed the fire back in different directions on all the fires. Our team currently is overseeing the Patrick Fire, the Nuns Fire, and the Atlas Peak Fire. And so getting resources out there, protecting property and saving lives is still the priority, and working on perimeter control and defensive structures where applicable. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, I'd like to add one last thing that came up. Right now is a time on the incidents where people, if they can't get in, want to start using things like drones. We ask that you please refrain from any drone use in any fire areas. If you fly, we cannot fly our aircraft, and we have aircraft on all of our fires trying to contain these incidents. So please make sure that those drones do not go up. Thank you.
Additionally, from a safety and utility standpoint, if there are sewer backups or emergencies into your homes, we ask that you call 707-204-4347. That is an environmental health matter. So again, sewer backups into your home, call 707-204-4347. Of course, being able to share the most relevant and up-to-date information is what the EOC is tasked to do, and we know that that brings comfort to people, whether they're in the evacuation zones or not. We will continue round the clock to provide the most up-to-date information, and simply because someone is not getting that Nixle message, it doesn't mean that the information isn't coming. It means that something has not changed. I will again reiterate those platforms that we're using to distribute the most current information, and that is the county's website. The county's website also includes fire incident maps as well, so you can check that out. We're using social media platforms of Facebook and Twitter. We're using Nixle. Nixle is our emergency mass communication system. It can be email or text based. To receive the alerts, you may text your zip code to 888-777, or you can go onto nixle.com and sign up for the emails. Additionally, this service is available in Spanish by texting ESP and your zip code to 888-777. We're continuing to coordinate with our media partners, and we thank you all for being here today to be able to get the message out to our residents and to those that are concerned of our residents. The Napa County employees need to check in with their supervisors or their department heads to see if they are essential work staff for the day because of CHP's roadway advisories. Public information is available. We are staffing that phone line. It is general information only. To reiterate, we cannot give details about specific people. That number is 707-253-4501, and that's general public information. Again, I would like to reiterate that this remains a life safety fire event. We will continue to ensure and prioritize the safety of our residents. We will continue to maintain secure areas with the evacuation zones. We ask people to be mindful of their health. There is a lot of smoke in the air. If you're feeling ill, seek health care advice at our clinics. We are staffed up with medical clinics at the evacuation centers at Napa Valley College and at Crosswalk Community Church, and we ask people that they help each other. Please be mindful of your safety, of your neighbor's safety. To reiterate, we don't have any approximations of evacuees or the number of homes or structures. That's simply not where we're at. As soon as we have information, we will get it out there, and we'll keep the residents and all those concerned informed. This concludes our press conference, and we will take questions at this time.
Sheriff, can we ask you, anybody else reported missing, Sheriff? Any missing persons reports you have right now, people that we may find to be victims of this fire?
We have had questions, and people are checking evacuation centers and with friends and things like that. The inability for us to communicate through social media and things like that it's really restricted our ability to communicate with the public. So people are seeking that information on their own, and they're going to the evacuation sites and checking with them and checking with friends when they can.
Did you find anybody else?
No, sir.
The question for the congressman about the aid. How much aid do you think Napa needs, and what, if any, has been your conversation directly with the White House?
I don't know that you can quantify a number. Napa County is going to need aid in both fighting the fire, keeping people safe, and dealing with the aftermath. And we're going to make sure we work tirelessly that ensure that they get all the money that they need. As you no doubt know, there's a huge backlog in Washington in regard to disaster funding. Napa County still hasn't received all the funding that they are due from the last natural disaster that we experienced. That's why it's incredibly important that Congress do its job and appropriate the funds so they are available when Napa County, any other county in this state or any other state has a disaster such as this. People need the help, and it's the government's job to provide that help. Congress has a responsibility, and they need to live up to that responsibility.
Has the White House reached out to you or any of the delegation here?
As I say, I've spoken with FEMA. They're aware of this. All of the documentation has been sent to both FEMA and to the White House. And as I understand it, last night at an event in Sacramento, an unrelated event in Sacramento, the Vice President had stated that the federal government will be here for the areas in California that have been hit by severe fires.
Let's talk about safety for a moment. We were out live all morning in front of some of those closed roads, and the troopers that were on the scene told the people who wanted to return to their homes that it was optional, that it was at their own risk. What do you say to the woman who's trying to save the 40 horses that are on her farm, who are desperately trying to figure out what to do next?
A lot of the citizens have rallied together in removing livestock, and obviously people's animals are extremely important to them. Initially during the fire, it wasn't a priority. Life and safety is a priority. People are going back in and they're removing their livestock. We're assisting where we have we're escorting people back in to remove livestock and animals and things like that. But yes, people are going in at their own risk to remove animals. We can't have a lot of traffic going in, so most of those are escorted.
So at their own risk, only when necessary?
Yes.
We'll take 2 more questions.
Can you expand a little bit more about this website where you can actually, for folks that are looking for family members?
The
Safe and Well.
The Safe and Well website, similar to the Facebook check-in of you're able that you are safe from a natural disaster event, and certainly it's just a method by which people can list themselves as safe and loved ones can go look for you. Again, for confidentiality reasons, we're not able to be the medium by which that happens, and that's why we are using and encouraging people to check themselves as safe on safeandwell.org.
It was mentioned that you might be using the radio to get information out because that's the only option that a lot of people have. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Certainly, we will be coordinating with our local radio station, KVYN, KVON, and we will have members of this team behind us and others that have up-to-date information to be able to disseminate that via radio every hour throughout the day. I'll take one more question.
Chief Government, can we ask you about this many large fires all starting at the same time, late at night? I believe they all started around that time, late hour on Sunday night. Does that seem unusual to you? And are you finding anything at all that would suggest any of these fires are suspicious?
Unusual, yes, to have that many fires start. All fires are being investigated currently. There is nothing or no indication that I've received that as to what the causes were. However, being on scene to the Atlas fire, one of the first resources at scene, the winds were extremely erratic. Branches were blowing off trees as I was trying to make access, and so during those conditions of high winds, a lot of things happen. We were under red flag warning. The humidities were extremely low, so it doesn't take much to start a fire. But there is nothing to indicate what the cause is, just that they're all being investigated right now. Thank you. Thanks.
This concludes our press conference for today. We will have another press conference tomorrow at 9 a.m. If you would like to schedule interviews, you can do so through our public information officers, which are located here. Again, we would like to reiterate that we do not have a number of evacuees at this time. We want everyone to stay safe, stay out of the evacuated zones, and we're doing our very best.
All right, folks, so we did get that update in the Napa Valley home situation for those homeowners and people that are just dealing with the wildfires there in California. We'll have much more a little bit later here on News Now. We're going to take you out to Maryland right now, where the Deputy Attorney General is speaking right now.
But it doesn't necessarily prove the person's intent. It's notable that all the new data is generated by and in the hands of private companies. Companies increasingly collect volumes of personal information about individuals in order to predict human behavior and produce revenue. Databases are built for marketers who are comfortable making decisions based on far less information and far less assurance of accuracy than we require before prosecuting someone for a crime. But we may be awash in data, but it's not always the kind of evidence that our rule of law traditions require as sufficient to establish guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Police and prosecutors were the first to recognize the danger of going dark, but the public bears the cost. When investigations of violent criminal organizations come to a halt because we cannot access a phone, lives may be lost. When child molesters can operate anonymously over the internet, children may be exploited. And when terrorists can communicate covertly without fear of detection, chaos may follow. It is important to recognize that our concern about the harm caused by going dark is not inconsistent with our support for cybersecurity. We at the Department of Justice understand and encourage strong cybersecurity to protect our citizens. We know from experience that the largest companies have the resources to do what is necessary to promote cybersecurity while also protecting public safety. A major hardware provider, for example, reportedly maintains private keys that it can use to sign software updates for each of its devices. That would present a huge potential security problem if the keys were to leak. But the keys do not leak because the company knows how to protect what is important. Companies can protect their ability to respond to lawful court orders with equal diligence. We live in a brave new world. Technology companies are working to build a world with armies of drones and fleets of driverless cars, a future of artificial intelligence and augmented reality. Surely those companies could design consumer products that provide data security while still permitting lawful access with court approval. As the going dark trend grows, local, state, and federal law enforcement officers need to be candid about how criminals use encrypted services and devices for illegal purposes. I spoke a few minutes ago with Cy Vance, who's here for this conference, who's been one of the most outspoken leaders on behalf of law enforcement, and 85% of law enforcement is local and state, not federal. So our state and local partners are well aware of the challenges that we face. In an era of dramatic and rapid change, we have a duty to maintain our commitment to the rule of law. That requires us to be forthcoming about the dangers posed by emerging threats. If companies are permitted to create law-free zones for their customers, citizens should understand the consequences. When police cannot access evidence, crimes cannot be solved. Criminals cannot be stopped and punished. There is an alternative. Responsible encryption can protect privacy and promote security without forfeiting access for legitimate law enforcement purposes. Technology companies almost certainly will not develop responsible encryption if left to their own devices. Competition will fuel a mindset that leads them to produce products that are more and more impregnable. That will give criminals and terrorists more opportunities to cause harm with impunity. Sounding the alarm about the dark side of technology is not popular. Everyone who speaks candidly about going dark faces attacks by advocates of absolute privacy. Some advocates are motivated by profit. Others demonstrate sincere concerns about the value of privacy. But they are not concerned about preserving law enforcement capabilities. Those of us who are sworn to protect the rule of law have a different motivation. We are obliged to speak the truth. The truth is that going dark threatens to disable law enforcement and enable criminals and terrorists to operate with impunity. So allow me to conclude with this thought. There is no constitutional right to sell warrant-proof encryption. If our society chooses to let businesses sell technologies that shield evidence, even from court orders, it should be a fully informed decision. But thank you for your attention. Thank you for your devoted service to our great nation. I look forward to your questions.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that incredibly thought-provoking and fantastic speech. You raised a number of very interesting and important questions that I would love to talk about for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. Unfortunately, we have about a half hour. So what I want to do is have this both a dialogue between us as well as the audience. There are microphones up on the concourse, so if you'd like to ask a question to the Deputy Attorney General, please line up by one of the microphones, and I'll alternate between questions I ask as well as some audience questions. So what I want to talk about first, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the encryption and going dark debate, you mentioned at the beginning of your remarks the oath that both federal prosecutors and midshipmen take. What advice do you have for the midshipmen in the audience about how to always remain faithful to that oath?
Well, I can share with you the advice that I share with federal prosecutors. It was my job as U.S. Attorney for 12 years to administer that oath to our new assistant U.S. attorneys. And what I tell them and what I would tell you is that that oath gives you a responsibility to act consistently with the traditions that you've inherited. When you join the Navy, you were very proud, and your families and friends were proud because of the tradition that they knew that you were becoming a part of. And that's not a legacy that you earned, it's a legacy that you inherited, and you're the beneficiary of it. Taking that oath gives you an obligation to carry it forward and to make sure that you in your own conduct act consistently with your obligations, and also that you monitor your colleagues, because each of them has the ability to influence that reputation as well. So always keep that in mind, that you have a responsibility not just to yourself and your family, but to all those who came before and all those who will come after.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, getting into the encryption and going dark debate, as an observer, I've been quite surprised over the past few years as to how heated and contentious this debate has become. And what I see from the folks who might disagree with some of the points that you made is it often coming down to a lack of trust for law enforcement, saying we don't want to change any policies related to encryption because we don't trust that the government will abide by all of these restrictions. What can you say and what can you do to instill that trust?
Well, actually, what we have in mind is not a system where you necessarily need to trust the government, because we don't think the government has to have possession of the keys or possession of the information. What we have in mind actually is that companies could be responsible for that in the same way that they're currently responsible for the information. And so we would actually not want to mandate that they achieve law enforcement warrant ability in any particular way. We would leave it to the engineers who design these systems to design them in a way that ensures that if and when the government obtains a warrant and has a legitimate need for access to that information, that they're able to produce it. And so the assurance in terms of the government would be that in no case would the government be acting without proper process, without a court order. That's the same process we use for everything else in our society. There are no secrets that are immune from access with a court order. The court can compel you to produce documents. It can compel you to testify. It can authorize the government to execute search warrants and break into homes and businesses, but only with probable cause and a judicial finding. And that's the same sort of standard that would apply in cyberspace as it does everywhere else.
Excellent. Now, in your years as a prosecutor, you've been with the DOJ since after clerking in law school. You must have faced other challenges in terms of gathering evidence, investigating, and prosecuting that relate to technology. How does this differ from what you've seen over your career?
There are two differences. The first is just in volume. When I started prosecuting in 1990, a complex white-collar fraud case might involve a few dozen boxes of documents. Now with electronic evidence, digital evidence, you have exponentially more evidence. But in the old days, when I started prosecuting 27 years ago, we could get access to every document. We weren't restricted by encryption. So that's the most significant differences. There's two significant differences: the volume of information and the existence now of warrant-proof encryption, so that even with a court order, we're unable to get evidence.
Now, you talked about some possible changes in terms of the technology side of things. I'm wondering, on the legal side, there's been a lot of debate about whether the current laws, including the Allred Act, can compel technology companies to provide assistance, or whether there might need to be a new statute passed by Congress, similar possibly to CALEA. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
So the Allred Act, for the non-lawyers in the room, the Allred Act is a statute that dates back to the founding of the Republic and generally empowers courts to issue orders that are required to carry out their responsibilities. And so the government has argued that the Allred Act authorizes the court to require the providers to comply comply with warrants. There's been resistance to that, though, and no definitive, dispositive judicial ruling. And so when we go down that road, the providers always resist and appeal and delay. And so the existing law may well authorize the government to get what it needs, but it's always more effective and always elicits quicker responses if there's particular legislation that requires that result.
Okay. And one other interesting part of this debate that I've noticed over the past few years is just sort of the adversity between at least some tech companies and the government. And when you look at other areas of cybercrime over the years, there hasn't necessarily been that adversity. When you look, for example, at child pornography, there have been successful efforts like PhotoDNA, which the technology sector developed with Dartmouth researchers and NCMEC, and that's something they've gone above and beyond their duty to help crack down on child pornography distribution. Do you think that cooperation is even possible at this point, or have the politics of it sort of shifted so much that?
I'm not sure it's about politics. I think the government is always willing to engage in discussions about these challenges. And when we talk about the issue, we talk about it in candid terms because we actually see the implications in our investigations. We generally don't use heated rhetoric, and we try to be clear that we support encryption and we support cybersecurity, and we are not seeking to allow the government to snoop without proper authorization. And so that kind of rhetoric doesn't come from the government side. I think the reaction that you see, as I described in my remarks, is a product of, number one, people who sincerely believe that absolute privacy is an important value, and I respect that, but you have to recognize that if you have a system that is impregnable to law enforcement, then you're going to allow a lot of crime. You're going to prevent law enforcement from being able to solve crimes, and that's the reason why people like Cy Vance and I are talking about this problem, because I think it's important for people to understand what the implications are. But then you also have people who have a profit motive who actually market encryption, and they've got an understandable incentive to do that. And so I think that's why it may be very difficult to arrive at a compromise on this issue where there have been compromises on other issues, but when it's in the interest of the companies to advertise that their software and hardware is impregnable even to the government, and that's actually a marketing tactic, it's going to be very difficult to arrive at a consensus.
And now Apple has obviously played a large role in this debate. Their CEO has made a number of statements about the encryption, and they've taken some legal positions. And they really are the focus of a lot of this discussion. There are other technology companies out there. I'm wondering if you could talk about any discussions you've had with them, and are you hearing the same arguments, or do you think there might be some room for agreement with other companies?
I think it's important to point out that the government does not have a contentious relationship with Apple or any other of these technology companies. There are a lot of areas where we work cooperatively with them on cybersecurity. It's this one area of encryption where there appears to be an insurmountable difference of opinion, but you shouldn't at all draw the conclusion that that we are adverse to technology companies. We're very supportive of technology companies. We work with them to enhance their security and to achieve mutual goals. For example, the child pornography, the effort to combat child pornography that Professor Kossev made reference to. And we do work with many technology companies, and there are ongoing relationships with those companies.
Excellent. Before I go on, I'd like to encourage anyone who has questions to please go to the microphone. We have about 15 minutes left, and it would be great to get some questions from the audience. One thing I did want to talk about is we often talk about the encryption debate in the domestic law context. Obviously, the internet, telecommunications are global, so we need to look at what other countries are doing as well. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what your counterparts in other countries have been doing, and if you've been having any discussions with them.
We do. We engage in continual communications with our allies allies, both in particular cases where we have shared interests and access to data, or where we have data that they need access to, or they have data that we need access to, and also on the broader policy issues. So it's an ongoing discussion. Different countries have different laws that apply in varying ways. Some countries don't have the First Amendment, for example, and some countries have place different values on privacy. But we do have ongoing discussions with them, and all of our allies face the same challenge. Anybody who is seeking to fight crime and terrorism faces the challenge of dealing with adversaries who have found ways to communicate secretly and to conceal evidence of their misconduct.
I see midshipman up on the right. Do you have a question?
Thank you, sir. Midshipman Ingle. I wanted to ask, assuming that we can trust the government to use an avenue to access encrypted data responsibly, how can we trust them in light of recent attacks and release of classified information and tools at NSA to protect those avenues from foreign adversaries and third parties?
Well, as I described, what we have in mind here is not for the government to sweep up data and then store it for future use. We're talking about situations where there is a particular targeted need, a criminal investigation, just as there would be in the physical world, where there's documentary evidence that's in possession of a particular person. We can get a search warrant or a subpoena and compel that person to produce the document, or authorize agents to break into the building and take custody of the document. That's the way we conduct criminal investigations. That's the same thing we have in mind with regard to responsible encryption. When there's a particular need in a particular case, the government is authorized, with the permission of the judge, to get access to that precise information. So you don't need to trust the government to keep random data safe, because we wouldn't be collecting random data. We'd only be collecting the same sort of information that we normally collect in all of our other cases when there are physical documents that are relevant to an investigation.
Do I see another question? I'm not sure. Okay, so
the balcony there, I believe.
Yes.
Servant First Class Louie. I agree that allowing private companies to develop these technologies would provide a means for crime. At the same time, in a very interconnected world, these means are often the only way for private citizens to achieve privacy. Going beyond mere privacy, these technologies offer protection against abuses of power. My question deals specifically with the press, which performs the essential task of uncovering these abuses of power. In your opinion, sir, would banning dark technologies rid Americans of their only means of uncovering instances of government abuse of power?
So I'm not sure I heard the whole question, but I think you're asking about the media. Is that the question?
Yes, sir. Media uncovers government abuse of power. That's one of their main tasks. But if these technologies were banned, then the government would have a means of targeting these the media that is trying to uncover them.
Thank you for that question, because I want to be very clear. We are not in any way suggesting that encryption technologies or cybersecurity technologies should be banned. Quite the contrary. We think they should be as robust as possible. The issue, though, is whether or not the companies should retain the ability to assist law enforcement when there's a need to get access to particular communication and a particular set of stored data. And so, the analogy would be that we allow people to buy a safe, for example. You can buy a safe and you can make it very secure, but there's still going to be a way to get into that safe where you have a lawful court order. That's basically the analogy to what we're talking about in the cyber world. Not to prohibit the production of the safe. In fact, we want to encourage the creation and marketing of safes that are as secure as possible to protect data against intrusion by criminals and terrorists. We just think that there should be a way preserved so that with appropriate judicial approval in a case where there is probable cause that justifies it, the company retains the ability to help government get access to the safe.
So just building on that analogy, what some of the technology companies would say is, okay, you could have that safe, but it'll even be more secure if there isn't a way to get into it. How would you respond? Would you agree with that? And do you think that's just a trade-off that we have to have for national security?
I think there are two levels of responses to that. The first is that even if it were the case that a safe that is completely impregnable is more secure than one that is subject to a warrant, I think it would be appropriate for us to make a responsible decision about whether or not we want to incur the cost of creating warrant-proof safes. Maybe we do. Maybe we put it to a vote. We do. But people have to understand the consequences. The consequences are that people who use those devices will be able to commit crimes, will be able to victimize you and your family, and when you call 911, we won't be able to help because we won't be able to get in that safe. However, we actually don't think it's necessarily the case that those safes will be insecure, because we believe that there are many ways today that companies actually preserve the ability to have an alternative way into encrypted systems. And again, we don't suggest that we should dictate from the central government how that ought to happen, but we do know that most companies do have the ability to access their operating systems and to, as I described in my speech, there are multiple ways that they do it, and we would leave it to the engineers to figure that out. But we believe that it can be done because in some ways it actually already is done.
A question up there?
Second class Hyman from 12th Company. Does the Department of Justice currently encounter or foresee a risk that criminal organizations, terrorists, or even corporations facing antitrust lawsuits could access Department of Justice information to influence investigations or prohibit prosecution?
Well, the Department of Justice is just as potentially vulnerable as anybody else, and so we have information security experts, IT experts, who try to design our systems to resist, to limit the ability to break into them. But all computer systems are potentially vulnerable to intrusions, and so we're always alert for that sort of thing. But I do think that if somebody were to intervene in a government system and attempt in some way to obstruct the investigation, we'd probably figure it out and hold them accountable. So I would not suggest that anybody try to do that.
Thank you, sir.
One thing that's slightly related to that, we're under constant cyber attacks from other countries, from Russia and our election system, from North Korea hacking some of our largest companies. And just we've been talking a lot about the challenges that encryption poses for law enforcement. I'm wondering if you could talk about the role that encryption plays for national security when we're facing these threats from all over the globe.
So encryption is a valuable defense. That's the point that Professor Kossuth is making. And I think it's an important defense. As I said, we are all in favor of strong encryption and other techniques to defend American computer systems and American data from foreign intrusions and hacking. And that's a continuing effort. The government works cooperatively with the private sector. I mentioned earlier, we're not in any way in an adversarial relationship with tech companies. We have very close working relationships between the FBI, the Justice Department, and other federal agencies, and the technology companies. We want to do everything we can to help them develop systems that are protected against foreign intrusions, and then when there are efforts, we're going to do what we can to help defend those systems and, in appropriate cases, to take punitive action in response. And so we do work closely with the technology industry and with all private companies that face, as Professor Kossuth acknowledges, that face these constant cyber attacks.
See a question way up there.
Midshipman, third class NO. Sir, you talked about the intent of companies to go dark and make it even harder to get into their own devices. But, sir, my question is, companies like Apple introduce fingerprint scanners, and even the newest iPhone you can open with a scan of your face. But these methods of unlocking devices can be court-ordered to be used. Doesn't this go against a sentiment of going dark and making their devices impregnable to law enforcement?
So the question is whether the companies are designing the systems in a way that's inconsistent with going dark?
Sir, because these new methods of unlocking devices can be court-ordered, doesn't that go against their own
yes,
intent?
I understand your point. Right now, so companies do engineer devices that allow you to unlock them with biometric information, like a fingerprint or facial recognition. But some of those companies also market safeguards to prevent or to limit the government's ability to compel them to be open, if that's what you have in mind. For example, by designing the system so that if a thumbprint isn't used within a certain number of hours or days, you need to code in the password, and thereby defeating our ability to compel somebody to put their thumb on the phone, for example, or to hold it up to somebody's face. So I think that does illustrate that even from the company's perspective, they want to make their devices secure, but they also want to make them reasonable to use. And that's one of the reasons why companies do provide safeguards. If you forget your password, you are not necessarily out of luck. They do already have technology with recovery keys, for example, to get you into devices that you're locked out of. And so companies do, on their own, make that trade-off because they recognize that the people do value privacy, but they also value their own security, their own ability to get into the device if they were to forget or misplace a password.
Now, somewhat related to that, what challenges, and this may be less discussed in the Going Dark debate, but what challenges does the Fifth Amendment's self-incrimination?
All right, everybody, welcome to the Fox 10 News Now stream, part of fox10phoenix.com. News Now will be right back in the next 2 minutes. Start you off with Ron Hoon up here to talk about the latest headlines coming out today. And welcome to News Now, taking a live look here at the I-10 right at the 7th Street exit. And, it's kind of a sad day for baseball fans here, D-backs fans, as D-backs last night eliminated from a playoff contention. Hi, everybody. Mike Page alongside Ron Hoon. And, they got swept by the Dodgers.
Well, and I know why you're showing that exit, because that's the exit you'd get off to get downtown to the Chase Field and actually watch the World Series. I mean, that's what we were all hoping for, right?
Yes.
It just didn't happen this year. No. But, you know what? We were talking about, so every day we plan out the next day's show over on Fox 10. I realize we're on Fox 10 Extra. And Celeste made a really good point. She said, even if they lose tonight, our whole approach this morning should be amazing season. Thank you for the incredible good times that we've all had enjoying just how great this team has been.
Yeah, it really has been. When you think about it, last year, I mean, they had the opposite win-loss. Mm-hmm. They go from losing 90-plus games to winning 90-plus games. Great.
Oh, That is a major accomplishment.
It really is.
And the
rookie coach as well.
Yes, right. And the acquisition of J.D. Martinez.
Coming through.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
I didn't even prep you, but I put a poll question up in this regard. I said, so who's most likely? D-back season ends. We got a big story coming up about the Cardinals in just a minute. And so I said D-backs, Cardinals, Suns, Coyotes.
There you go. Yeah, I got you, Ron.
Who's most likely to win? Who'll be the next team to win a championship?
That's a good question
in Arizona.
So let's see what people are saying. I'm just gonna. I have to activate it by guessing.
Okay, so who are you gonna vote for?
I am going to go with.
This is decision time for you. We're gonna finally realize how Big Mike feels when it comes to these 4 teams. By the way, we're one of only 9 cities in the United States big enough to handle all 4 major sports franchises.
That's true.
Did you realize that?
Not too many.
Not too many cities
have all the big 4 there.
Only 14% say the Suns, and only 17% say the Cards.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know what? That's coming from Sunday's big loss.
I know.
I think they're a little hungover from that.
I know. Honestly, if we'd taken that poll right at the beginning of the season, 6 weeks ago, I bet you 50% would have been saying the Cards. So hopefully they can get that turned around with the big story that Mike's got coming up for you in a second. But anyway, right now about 50% say they love the Diamondbacks' chances to once again become world champions, just like in that magical year of 2001.
Yeah, and they have so much great stuff to build upon, too.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, no kidding.
So that's going to be very exciting for a lot of baseball fans, D-backs fans. Looking forward to that. March can't come fast enough with spring training.
Yeah, I know. It is a beloved time of year. For those of you who are watching us in different parts of the country, come on down sometime and just try us out in March. The weather is usually about like what we have right now.
Yeah,
in the
really
80s, And the weather is so beautiful, and people just have a great, relaxed time out at all these spring training games. So, yep, we can't wait for next baseball season already.
All right, and we have some other news here regarding sports out here in Arizona. Big acquisition made. Look at this, folks. This is on our Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook page. You could chime in right now and let us know what you think here. But Adrian Peterson, he's coming on over.
Yeah. Well, this guy is going to be in the Hall of Fame, and he is an unbelievable talent who has had some injury issues. He was very promising with the Minnesota Vikings, and he took a real bad injury, and so he restarts with New Orleans. But the Cardinals are in desperate need of a good running back and a good offensive line. I mean, they got a decent one now, but they either need to step up or they got to get a couple more key pieces to the puzzle. Nevertheless, it's a huge name, and we really hope that he can be a difference maker going forward.
Yeah, you would think, coming to a new team, he wants to still prove that he has something.
Yes.
That the legs are still fresh, so you would hope that he'd come here and kind of be an explosive force. And not only that, but maybe be a motivator for others as well on the team.
Some of the younger guys could absolutely learn from him. I mean, he is tenacious the way he fought back from his knee injury. And when a lot of people thought he wouldn't. I can still remember watching that Monday night game, when they're helping him off the field and having to go through the restaurant. It's a weird setup in Minnesota.
Yeah,
you got to kind of go through the restaurant to get into the training area where they were going to be working on it. But anyhow, we'll see. It's got the potential to be like a Kurt Warner story or a Carson Palmer story.
I'll give you that.
Veteran guys who had already seen big success in the league. Kurt Warner with the St. Louis Rams, he comes here, does even better. Or it could be like Carson Palmer, who took the Cincinnati Bengals to the playoffs and comes here, does even better. It could be one of those situations. On the other hand, people who've been Cardinal fans for a long time, they do remember when the Cards traded for yet another Hall of Fame name who really didn't get much done during his time with the team. I'm talking about Emmitt Smith.
Yes.
He made his way with the Dallas Cowboys, and he was excited to be given the opportunity to keep playing out here in Arizona, and nothing really worked out. So we shall see. Obviously, we're all hoping that it's going to be the as the poll question says, a good move.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, people will be like, boy, that helped to turn it around.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of the NFL, what about the president and the NFL? Not on good terms right now. Look at this tweet that he put out. He said, why is the NFL getting massive tax breaks while at the same time disrespecting our anthem, flag, and country? Change the tax law. What do you think about that, Ron?
Okay. So, you know, it's interesting because it was just last night that they had, what was it? I think, you know, he was sending out some tweets that he was supportive of Jerry Jones. Now, you remember what Jerry Jones said earlier in the day. Tell our audience about that.
All right, so Jerry Jones is saying, pretty much giving the ultimatum to his players. He says, you either stand or, you know what, you'll be sitting on the bench. So that was the ultimatum there. So we'll see what comes from this, though. But
yeah, and the president was very supportive of him in a tweet last night. But boy, he woke up in a bad mood about the NFL today, Big Mike.
Yeah.
Because he got right back on that.
He has tweeted so many times about the NFL.
Yeah.
This is really a hot-button issue for him.
It is. And again, you don't know if he's truly worked up about it or if it's a situation where, you know, he's kind of trying to rev up the base.
Yeah.
So, who knows? But we do know this. He sent that tweet out that they need to change the tax laws, and there's been a lot of talk about it ever since. The thing is, there's so many other tweets from the president today and so many other angles to, you know, to kind of what's going on in the White House that you really, it's almost like you could develop a whole list. We could have point after point after point of stuff that's been going on either with the president or at the White House.
I know, and when the president tweets, I always say this, it's not going to be just one. It's usually he fires off 3 or 4 within that 20 minutes or 15-minute span that he gets at it.
Yeah.
Now, do you think when he is tweeting, so he'll take out his phone, right?
Yeah, I think so. Remember when
we've never seen a picture of that yet, though. I would love to see a picture of him just like at his desk or, you know, like just on the phone. We've never seen that yet.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But do you think his aides, when he gets out the phone, do you think they're like, here we go, another one? Or do you think they're so used to it now where they're like, this is normal, this is normal?
You know, I haven't thought about the logistics of it.
Yes.
But the president can obviously clear the room whenever he wants to.
Yeah.
If he wants 20 minutes after one meeting and before the next meeting to just get on his phone, you know, it might very well be that. I don't know. Maybe he does it as one meeting's wrapping up. I do know there are some reports that the chief of staff, John Kelly, is still trying to kind of wrangle him in. But it's interesting because, believe it or not, today is one of those rare days where the biggest headline is not coming from one of the tweets he gave. It's coming from one of the interviews that he gave. This whole story of an interview that he gave to Forbes magazine where he says he thinks it's fake news, the reporting that Rex Tillerson called him a moron. And then he said, maybe we need to have an IQ test between the two of us, and we'll see who's smarter. And I can guarantee you who's going to win. I mean, he sees everything as a competition.
It really does.
That's for sure. So there are the pictures when he and Rex Tillerson appeared together. We had Nikki Haley there as well. This is back in Bedminster in New Jersey at the golf course.
And do you think right now the relationship is icy between Trump and Tillerson, or is
Great question, Mike. And you know what? We're going to find out because it's 1 o'clock right now in D.C. Well, it's 10 minutes after 1, and supposedly the two men are meeting today. But it doesn't sound like it's one of those, hey, the Secretary of State demanded a meeting and he's going to hand his resignation, or that the president summoned him for, you know, some kind of difficult meeting. My understanding is it's a lunch. They're going to meet and talk over lunch. And so maybe it will give them a chance to either clear the air. Or agree on the terms of the IQ contest.
Now that would be a must-watch event.
Yeah, wouldn't it? I mean, it would almost be like what's that game show that we had on Fox of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader or something?
Yes.
Yeah, some of those questions can be kind of tough. But these are two pretty savvy guys, so it'd have to be, are you smarter than like a third-year college student or, or who knows what? And they could actually answer the questions live. Who would we have as the host?
I think you got to bring back, if you're going to do a type like that, you got to bring back Jeff Foxworthy.
Oh, okay.
I think just keep it right there.
Sure. See, I was thinking more of a Bob Barker type.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'd be something.
Anyway, every day it's something new, that's for sure. And as we said on the air earlier this morning, here's another first. A president who may be challenging his Secretary of State to an IQ contest. Yeah. It's wild. Every day the headlines are amazing.
Just when you think a soundbite couldn't get any better, it always seems to does with the president, right? I mean,
right.
If you give him that chance to open up and say something, watch out.
Yeah. No, I think, they had a press availability. I think I saw for about 2 minutes this morning in the White House. You can't get a live shot. It's not allowed anyway, out of the Oval Office. So they have to run in with their cameras, they videotape roll it, and then they go to a location where they then uplink it and send it out live. And
the cell service in that building is horrible in the White House.
Oh, is that right?
You could barely get the call out.
See, let's upgrade. Can't we?
But maybe that's on purpose, I think. Don't you think? If they wanted to update, they'd probably update
so. And I'm sure he's got some kind of secure access, so the Wi-Fi's not an issue for him.
No. And tomorrow, President Trump, one-on-one interview with Hannity.
Yes.
That's going to be tomorrow on Fox News Channel.
Now, was it Hannity? Here's the thing. So Mike and I, we're both so darn busy as the morning goes on. We're constantly looking for the newest, most interesting stories for you guys. And, there are a lot of different headlines that are out there this morning in terms of, what direction do you want to go?
Yeah.
But with the president kind of taking on Rex Tillerson like that, you wonder how far it's going to go.
Yeah, it's like, do you really want to get in these kind of boxing jabs with your cabinet members?
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. But the other headline that's out there, this is kind of the direction I want to move the conversation for just 30 seconds, which is Steve Bannon is out this morning. That was an interview on Fox. In fact, I think it might have been on Hannity.
It was
last night.
It was, yes.
Okay.
Last night, Bannon on Hannity.
Declaring war on the GOP establishment, saying that he will put together a group that will run against every GOP incumbent who is up for re-election I believe, in the Senate. Who knows? Maybe they'll do some of it in the House, too. Because they want to get rid of Mitch McConnell and others inside the GOP establishment. So all I can say is this. Sami and I used to, last year during the presidential campaign, we used to say, what are we going to even have to talk about after the election's over? Well, welcome to 2017.
Yeah, you got enough.
And hold on to your hats for 2018.
Yeah.
Because if this is true, if there's like a civil war breaking out between the establishment, which would not go easily, and Steve Bannon, who was invited into the White House and then invited to leave the White House, and Bannon says he wants to do this to help Trump. We don't know exactly what the relationship between the two of them is. But, I mean, that's going to make even the primary season fascinating.
It will.
Let alone get to November about a year from now.
That's true.
It's going to be a fascinating year.
It really is. And I like that you were bringing up what was happening last year, because I got this video that I pulled up. I went back into the archives exactly a year ago today. President Trump, as we know, was on the campaign trail. It was heating up. We were getting very close to the election.
Right.
But a viral moment happened on this campaign trail at this rally where he brought up a small child from the crowd. Let's take a look, because it totally went viral here. Take a look at here. 1 year ago today. All right, and that just dumped out on me. Here we go one more time.
What's your name?
Name.
Now, he's supposed to look like Donald Trump, but he's actually much too good looking. You are really handsome. Are you having a good time tonight?
Night.
Where's your daddy? And your mommy, right? Do you want to go back? Do you want to go back to them, or do you want to stay with Donald Trump?
Trump.
Beautiful. What a beautiful boy. What a beautiful boy.
Well, there you go. 1 year ago today. How you like that, huh? Man, I tell you, you should do a few more of those flashbacks.
Yeah, well, there's enough of them.
Yeah,
we'll have them
for sure.
All right, here's what we have coming up on our feeds right now. This is happening live, and we'll take you there. Coming up next, though, it's Vice President Mike Pence in Sacramento. So we'll have more from Vice President Mike Pence coming up. You see him just coming through the doors right now. That's all coming up next on News Now.
Well, I'm going to be a step up from him, so let's see if I can. I'll still be short.
Come right up with me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for your work. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks, man. Yeah. God bless you. Well, first off, let me just say how proud all of America is of California Office of Emergency Services. The efforts of the men and women in this room, the efforts of the first responders that you're supporting and coordinating are at this very moment saving lives. And I stand here on behalf of our president and on behalf of a grateful nation for all the work.
Welcome back here to News Now, taking a live look right now of the Vice President Mike Pence in California to talk about the wildfire setup there and the operations center that they are going through right now. Let's listen in to Vice President Mike Pence talking about those deadly wildfires in California.
17 wildfires burning across Northern California alone, additional fires, as we saw from afar in Southern California yesterday. Most heartbreakingly, we were informed that 13 people have lost their lives as these fires have moved so rapidly forward. More than 2,000 homes and businesses destroyed, tens and thousands of more in harm's way. Let me first say our hearts and the hearts of every American go out to the families of the 13 who've lost their lives. It's heartbreaking to think that many of the fallen represent our most vulnerable, in some cases senior citizens who simply were not able to escape the flames that overcame their homes. They're in our prayers. We're profoundly grateful to all of you in this room and to the hands and feet of the men and women who are working in emergency services
all across the areas affected by these fires. I know the focus now is on containment and on moving people out of harm's way, and we're grateful for the efforts. And let me say, as I told Ken Pimlott moments ago, we are profoundly inspired and grateful by the firefighters that are in the fight, in many cases, men and women whose own homes have been affected by these wildfires. CAL FIRE is inspiring the nation, and we stand with them with great admiration and appreciation. Just a few moments ago, I informed Governor Brown that President Trump has approved a major disaster declaration for the state of California to assist in the response to wildfires that are impacting across the state. This declaration will allow FEMA to identify, mobilize, and provide additional equipment and resources to assist with the emergency. This includes debris removal, emergency protective measures, search and rescue operations. I'm pleased to report our administration has already been working with the team here at Cal OES to provide support even before this declaration. 5 firefighting crews, 4 dozers, 2 strike teams, Type 3 engines. More assets are on the way. I'm joined today by California's own Majority Leader in the Congress of the United States, Kevin McCarthy, and Congressman Jeff Denham. And I'm pleased to report that legislation that will be considered in the House of Representatives next week already includes $576 million for wildfire suppression to support the people of California and the efforts that you're coordinating in this room. You know, it's been a challenging month for the American people. A month and a half of natural disasters all across our country. But President Trump asked me to come here this morning to assure the people of California that we will continue to work very closely with Governor Brown, with the state of California, with each one of you to support your courageous first responders and come alongside the families affected through loss of persons and property in the wake of these wildfires. To California, we say through this declaration, we are with you, our prayers are with you, and we will be with you every day until we put the fires out and stand with these families to rebuild these communities. That's our pledge to each one of you today. So thank you. God bless you for your work, and we stand with you until the job is done.
All right, so that was Vice President Mike Pence there in California. Unfortunately, now 13 dead in Northern California from those wildfires. It was at 11 this morning, but then we received an update from Napa Valley officials saying that 2 other people died. One was 100 and the other was 98 years old. They were not able to evacuate their home when those fires came so fast in those neighborhoods in Napa Valley. We'll have much more, including that update from Napa Valley officials there. You're watching News Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to News Now. Taking a look at some video of the wildfires in Northern California. Unfortunately, 13 people so far have died, and that number could rise as there are close to 100 people that are still reported missing from their loved ones or friends and family members. So we're hoping for the very best, and we're hoping that that number does not increase at all. So we're hoping that 13, that'll be it there. Fire officials working so hard from not only the ground but the air as well to try to knock down those fires in Northern California. All right, we're going to show you a presser update from Napa County officials on what they're dealing with on this massive wildfire that is raging on in Northern California.
Our Senator Bill Dodd and our Assembly Member Cecilia Aguiar Curry to speak on emergency declarations and support that we're receiving from the outside.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm Mike Thompson. I represent this area in Congress. And first, I'd like to say that everybody on the ground working for the people of the affected area are doing a fantastic job, and would encourage everybody to listen to what our first responders, our fire, our sheriff, and our police say. They're doing everything they can to make sure that you are safe. Please listen to them and follow their directions. In regard to federal aid, as soon as the state submitted their declaration of disaster, the federal government almost immediately provided for federal fire assistant grants. That helps in a number of areas, and along with the state declaration helps to allow for the other areas to come in for mutual aid. It also provides important funding to the affected area. We've also put in for assistance from FEMA. That request has been made. I sent a letter signed by myself and Jared Huffman, who is the other congressman from Sonoma County, represents the other half of Sonoma County, to the White House. Yesterday, traveling with Sheriff John Robertson here in Napa, and then later with the Sheriff's Department on an overfly in Sonoma, took a number of photographs. All of those have been submitted to both FEMA and to the White House, so they understand exactly how serious and devastating this fire is on the people of our area. So we expect them to be moving quickly. I spoke with the FEMA director last night. They are understanding of the situation and will hopefully move quickly to declare both public assistance, and that's the federal money that will come to the affected area to do the repairs as needed and the response as needed, as well as the individual assistance, and that's grant money for people who have been harmed. Along with that comes a low-interest loan program. So all that is in the works. Senator Weinstein called me this morning. She is fully engaged in this, and she's pushing. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, spent a lot of time on the phone with her yesterday. She too is engaged, and the entire delegation, California delegation, will be pushing to get this response and these funds as soon as possible. I'll turn it over to Senator Dodd.
Good morning. First and foremost, you know, as the congressman alluded to, that the emergency declaration was put forth yesterday morning, signed by Governor Brown. I've been in contact with the governor and also the pro tem and the Speaker of the Assembly as well. And I think that it's really important to reiterate is the great job that our first responders have been doing. Sheriff John Robertson and the entire law enforcement team from the California CHP, the local cities, and the mutual aid that we have, our fire chief, Barry Bierman, and all the different fire agencies from throughout the state of California that are coming forward to help. I think one challenge that we do have that we're working on right now is connectivity. We all, none of us can stand it when we can't get an email or a text anytime we want it, but you get in that fire zone and or even closer to Napa, there is really no connectivity, and we're working hard to try to get that back. I talked to OES last night, and they have given me assurances that today's the day, but we need to get that going. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to take a ride up into a Silverado area with the Sheriff's Department. There's nothing more devastating as to see a family see their home for the first time. So today, with the support of all of these people behind us, we're trying to get people into homes, but let's face it, we have to make sure it's a safe time to do that. I know it's going to take a lot of patience and compassion to do so. So just remember the state of California and the governor's emergency declaration is paramount, because we'll be able to get additional resources. We'll be able to help people get driver's license and their documents that they're looking for, because obviously they've lost a lot. So with that, I just want to thank all of you, but please have some compassion with these people. This is a very difficult time. It's a difficult time for all of us behind you, because we want to make everything fixed quickly, but quite frankly, it's going to take some time. Thank you.
We certainly understand the desire for information, and this morning we are going to give you as much details as possible. The 2017 Napa Fire Complex is comprised of 3 fires. That is the Patrick Carneros Fire, the Tubbs-Calistoga Fire, and the Atlas Peak Fire. At this time, we simply do not have any idea how many evacuees we have. We do not know how many structures have been affected, and the reason is this is not a fire that we are facing from a firefighting standpoint right now. This remains life safety, same as yesterday. We are working on evacuations, making sure that the scenes are secure and that people are staying away from the danger zone and allowing our law enforcement to access those areas. At this time, we will go into speaking about the updates on each particular fire zone. Supervisor Pedroza will speak on the Atlas Peak Fire.
Good morning, everyone. Alfredo Pedroza, County Supervisor for the 4th District. The Atlas Peak Fire, as of 5:45 this morning, we had 25,000 acres burned. No reported of any containment at this point. As Supervisor Ramos and other electeds have alluded, it's about making sure people are safe. Safety is our #1 concern right now. These has caused some evacuations. On Atlas Peak Road, that is a mandatory evacuation. Also on Monticello Road, Atlas Peak to Circle Oaks, Soda Canyon Road, the avenues, Vichy, Hagen, Olive Hill, Monticello Parks, Silverado Country Club, Wooden Valley Road, Coombsville Road to Wild Horse Valley, Silverado Trail between Trancas and Sage Canyon between Silverado Trail and Turtle Rock, Capel Valley from Turtle Rock to Muscovite Corners. Now, a lot of folks have asked where are folks going to. So for our district, the evacuation centers are the Napa Valley College Gym. That address is 2277 Napa Valley Highway in Napa. And we also have Crosswalk Church, which is at 2590 First Street. There was a lot of impact in our district. I had a chance to visit our district yesterday, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe, to make sure that you guys and gals can go back to your district. But our concern right now is your priority in making sure Napa County is safe. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Diane Dillon. I'm supervisor for the upper half of Napa County, which includes the source of the Tubbs fire near Calistoga. The good news is that Calistoga, the city of Calistoga, is safe. Power was restored there yesterday afternoon. The Tubbs fire itself has not increased in size that we know of, but Petrified Forest Road is still closed. The road that leads over to Calistoga, Highway 128, is still closed. The road that goes from Calistoga up to Knights Valley. So the main thing we want to emphasize, we have a voluntary evacuation north of Tubbs Lane. But please stay out of the evacuation areas if you can, and we're going to be going on the radio. Chair Ramos will talk about that in a moment, to be able to communicate the message out more, because so many people do not have, as Senator Dodd said, access to the cell service, or and in my case, and no power still in where I live in St. Helena. So thank you for getting the message out as much as you can.
And I'm Brad Wagon-Connect. I'm supervisor from the 1st District, and I'm going to talk about the Patrick Fire. It's the little brother of these other 2 big fires. We have about 1,000 acres, but still zero containment. The Cardinals mandatory evacuations are Old Sonoma Road, Buman to Buman, Buman to Henry, Henry to Dealey, Duhigg at Las Amigas, and Las Amigas at Cuttings Wharf. And the Partrick Road mandatory evacuations are Partrick. We had last night 30 people staying at the Crosswalk Church and 100 people staying at the Napa Valley College.
We understand and we are very concerned that loved ones are looking for their family, they're looking for their friends, and certainly communication has been a struggle to achieve locating family. We want to encourage people, if you are looking for information on a loved one, the best place to look is www.safeandwell.org. Shelters are registering evacuees at this time. For confidentiality reasons, we are not able to release those names. That has to be done through that website, but we encourage people at the shelter to register. We encourage other evacuees to register. Even if you haven't been evacuated, go ahead, register so that that communication is opened with your loved ones and people that may be looking for you. We are working on establishing public access points of registration, and we'll be working with our library director on if we are going to have the capacity to open up our libraries, to have that be an additional source of a communication. At the present time, Comcast has opened a public Wi-Fi service in the following zip codes: 95401, 95403, 95404, 95405, 94558, 94559, 94903. These complimentary sessions, we're very grateful to Comcast, will be open through Friday, October 13th. Once a hotspot selected is going to be once a hotspot select Xfinity Wi-Fi network, and then you can launch your browser from it, it will take you into the registration for the hotspot once you are on that location. So certainly communication is key. At this time, we will go into some particulars of safety, and I would like to introduce Sheriff John Robertson.
Hi, John Robertson, Napa County Sheriff Coroner. It's with sorrow that I tell you today that we have confirmed 2 fatalities. Charles and Sarah Rippey, ages 100 and 98, were unable to be evacuated from the 100 block of Westgate in Napa County. Our thoughts are certainly with the family at this time. Thank you.
As of now, there are 27,000 people without power in Napa. After my tour of some of the fire zones yesterday, you can see why. A lot of down power lines. And when I went home last night to check with my family after a long day, there's people at home without power but without Wi-Fi, and they just don't know what's happening, especially if they're near a fire zone or not. So PG&E is going to be working today on restoring power for those areas outside the fire zones. And then PG&E's got to work with CAL FIRE on the other areas, restoring power fully to Napa. So that's in progress. Another piece of safety is people wanting to get home. We understand people want to get home just to check on their house or to get home and get back to their closet full of clothes and take a shower. We get that. But it's super important right now that everybody comply with evacuation orders for a lot of good reasons. And to help me explain that, Chief Bierman. Thank you.
Good morning, Barry Bierman. I'm the Deputy Incident Commander with CAL FIRE Incident Management Team 3, as well as the Napa County Fire Chief. Currently, in the evacuation areas, we have a lot of devastation that's gone on. And as discussed here today, there are a lot of people, as we can understand, that want to get back in there. Our number one priority is the safety. It's the safety of the public and the people that are evacuated, the safety of our first responders. Before we can get anyone back into these areas, there's a process to ensure that safety, to repopulate It's typical this time of an incident in some areas where we don't see smoke that understandably people want to get back in. However, it's not safe to do that until we can secure the utilities, the gas lines, ensure the trees aren't going to fall down on top of someone. So that area of repopulation is a process that we're already starting to work on. However, it is not as easy as one would hope to ensure that safety. So I ask that people please be patient as we work in these areas. The fires are still out there. They are still actively growing. We will be updating acreage and containment daily as we get that information. Resources still continue to be limited. We have folks on the fire line starting their third shift right now that have not been relieved because there's folks not available to come in with so many fires in the area. We are having to share resources as there are many priorities in the communities that are being affected by this. So everyone is working hard with not only trying to get people back into the areas that fire has gone through, but also the areas that still continue to have fire. We are still having active fire in all locations. We are unfortunately continuing to experience additional structure loss that happens due to the fire growth. The winds yesterday went from a northern wind to a southwestern wind in the evening and pushed the fire back in different directions on all the fires. Our team currently is overseeing the Partrick fire, the Nuns fire, and the Atlas Peak fire. And so getting resources out there, protecting property and saving lives is still the priority, and working on perimeter control and defensive structures where applicable. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, I'd like to add one last thing that came up. Right now is a time on the instance where people, if they can't get in, want to start using things like drones. We ask that you please refrain from any drone use in any fire areas. If you fly, we cannot fly our aircraft, and we have aircraft on all of our fires trying to contain these incidents. So please make sure that those drones do not go up. Thank you.
Additionally, from a safety and utility standpoint, if there are sewer backups or emergencies into your homes, we ask that you call 707-204-4347. That is an environmental health matter. So again, sewer backups into your home, call 707-204-4347. Of course, being able to share the most relevant and up-to-date information is what the EOC is tasked to do, and we know that that brings comfort to people, whether they're in the evacuation zones or not. We will continue round the clock to provide the most up-to-date information, and simply because someone is not getting that nixle message, it doesn't mean that the information isn't coming. It means that something has not changed. I will again reiterate those platforms that we're using to distribute the most current information, and that is the county's website. The county's website also includes fire incident maps as well, so you can check that out. We're using social media platforms of Facebook and Twitter. We're using Nixle. Nixle is our emergency mass communication system. It can be email or text based. To receive the alerts, you may text your zip code to 888-777, or you can go onto nixle.com and sign up for the emails. Additionally, this service is available in Spanish by texting ESP and your zip code to 888-777. We're continuing to coordinate with our media partners, and we thank you all for being here today to be able to get the message out to our residents and to those that are concerned of our residents. The Napa County employees need to check in with their supervisors or their department heads to see if they are essential work staff for the day because of CHP's roadway advisories. Public information is available. We are staffing that phone line. It is general information only. To reiterate, we cannot give details about specific people. That number is 707-253-4501, and that's general public information. Again, I would like to reiterate that this remains a life safety fire event. We will continue to ensure and prioritize the safety of our residents. We will continue to maintain secure areas with the evacuation zones. We ask people to be mindful of their health. There is a lot of smoke in the air. If you're feeling ill, seek health care advice at our clinics. We are staffed up with medical clinics at the evacuation centers at Napa Valley College and at Crosswalk Community Church, and we ask people that they help each other, Please be mindful of your safety, of your neighbor's safety. To reiterate, we don't have any approximations of evacuees or the number of homes or structures. That's simply not where we're at. As soon as we have information, we will get it out there, and we'll keep the residents and all those concerned informed. This concludes our press conference, and we will take questions at this time.
Sheriff, can we ask you, anybody else reported missing, Sheriff? Any missing persons reports you have right now, people that we may find to be victims of this fire?
We have had questions, and people are checking evacuation centers and with friends and things like that. The inability for us to communicate through social media and things like that it's really restricted our ability to communicate with the public. So people are seeking that information on their own, and they're going to the evacuation sites and checking with them and checking with friends when they can.
Did you find anybody else?
No, sir.
The question for the congressman about the aid. How much aid do you think Napa needs, and what, if any, has been your conversation directly with the White House?
I don't know that you can quantify a number. Napa County is going to need aid in both fighting the fire, keeping people safe, and dealing with the aftermath. And we're going to make sure we work tirelessly that ensure that they get all the money that they need. As you no doubt know, there's a huge backlog in Washington in regard to disaster funding. Napa County still hasn't received all the funding that they are due from the last natural disaster that we experienced. That's why it's incredibly important that Congress do its job and appropriate the funds so they are available when Napa County, any other county in this state or any other state has a disaster such as this. People need the help, and it's the government's job to provide that help. Congress has a responsibility, and they need to live up to that responsibility.
Has the White House reached out to you or any of the delegation here?
As I say, I've spoken with FEMA. They're aware of this. All of the documentation has been sent to both FEMA and to the White House. And as I understand it, last night at an event in Sacramento, an unrelated event in Sacramento, the Vice President had stated that the federal government will be here for the areas in California that have been hit by severe fires.
Let's talk about safety for a moment. We were out
Right, and coming up maybe in the next 15 to 20 minutes, we are expecting the White House press briefing to hear some updates on the federal response to those horrible wildfires there in California. More News Now continues next.
Animals are extremely important to them. Initially, during the fire, it wasn't a priority. Life and safety is a priority. People are going back in, and they're removing their livestock. We're assisting where we're escorting people back in to remove livestock and animals and things like that. But yes, people are going in at their own risk to remove animals. We can't have a lot of traffic going in, so most of those are escorted.
So at their own risk, only when necessary?
Yes.
We'll take two more questions.
Hey, expand a little bit more about this website where you can actually, for folks that are looking for family members,
The
Safe and Well.
The Safe and Well website, similar to the Facebook check-in of your able that you are safe from a natural disaster event, and certainly it's just a method by which people can list themselves as safe and loved ones can go look for you. Again, for confidentiality reasons, we're not able to be the medium by which that happens, and that's why we are using and encouraging people to check themselves as safe on safeandwell.org.
It was mentioned that you might be using the radio to get information out because that's the only option that a lot of people have. Does anyone want to talk about that?
Certainly, we will be coordinating with our local radio station, KVY.
Welcome back here to News Now, taking a live look at the White House press briefing room, where we're expecting about 10 to 15 minutes Sarah Huckabee Sanders at the podium. So we'll watch that feed, and as soon as she gets there, of course, we will bring that to you. Hi, everybody. Mike Pace as we continue on here with News Now. And I got some video for you that you're going to see it and you're going to be like, what? Did that really happen? Yes, it did. We're talking about taking you out to Michigan right here. A stolen ambulance. Yep, that happened. A 21-year-old from Michigan decided to say, you know what? I'm going to go on a little joyride here. And look at the dash cam video that police have. This is an ambulance that, look, it's just going everywhere. It's off-roading right now. Went off the road and said, you know what, you're going to have to come and get me. A very scary situation, though, for drivers. Can you imagine if you're seeing an ambulance that just seems like to be going crazy? Usually it comes to the aid of people, and this one looked like it was about to smash into cars and cause some wrecks. Fortunately, though, police were able to finally get this driver out of the ambulance. No word yet on why this 21-year-old decided to steal an ambulance and go on a little joyride here. We are happy to report, though, that nobody was injured, but it looked like a couple of times during this video that, yeah, it definitely could have been accidents everywhere there. But you see, it finally did get stuck right there, and police had their guns drawn as they apprehended that suspect there. But yeah, something you definitely don't see every day here. So take a look at the runaway ambulance. A different term now for ambulance chasers, right?
Roberto, you're already here.
Usually those ambulance chasers are what they would call attorneys going to the hospitals to try to talk to some victims there. But this police then turned into ambulance chasers themselves there. So definitely a scene you don't see too often. That was happening in Michigan, and that video just coming out today. A little joyride action there from that suspect there. Now in jail and looking at some time behind bars for not only stealing the ambulance, but then look at how many traffic infractions were caused there. And luckily, no one was injured there. That is the good news. All right, folks, so we continue to wait for the White House press briefing. That should be happening in the next 10 minutes or so. So we're going to keep an eye out on that here for you as we continue on here with News Now. A little bit earlier, though, President Trump was in the Oval Office with a former Secretary of State, and he had some comments to make. Let's listen in right here.
The people of this country want tax cuts. They want lower taxes. We're the highest tax nation in the world. Our companies are not leaving so much now because we have them coming back. You see what happens. You see the announcements from companies building car plants now in Michigan. They're going to various different states. They're actually picking some additional locations. So just last week, 5 plants announced that they're going to build in this country. But I will say that we're the highest tax nation in the world. People want to see massive tax cuts. I'm giving the largest tax cuts in the history of this country. In addition to that, there'll be reform. So I think that it's politically, it's very positive. The people of the country want it. We're also bringing back $3 trillion from offshore. That's money that's been there for years that wants to come back into the country, but the tax situation didn't allow it to happen, and the bureaucracy. And that's going to come back as part of the deal. $3 trillion. It could even be more than that. People want to see tax cuts, they want to see major reductions in their taxes, and they want to see tax reform, and that's what we're doing. And we'll be adjusting a little bit over the next few weeks to make it even stronger. But I will tell you that it's become very, very popular. And I'll also be signing something probably this week, which is going to go a long way to take care of many of the people that have been so badly hurt on health care. And they'll be able to buy, they'll be able to cross state lines, and they will get great competitive health care, and it will cost the United States nothing. take care of a big percentage of the people we're talking about, too. So with Congress the way it is, I decided to take it upon myself. So we'll be announcing that soon as far as the Senate is concerned. But it's largely worked out it's very simple in one way, but very intricate in another. But it will be great health care for many, many people. A big percentage of the number of people that we were talking about for failed Obamacare. Now, we're going to have to do something with Obamacare because it's failing. Henry Kissinger does not want to pay 116% increase in his premiums, but that's what's happening, and it's actually getting worse. It's getting worse by the minute. So we're going to have to do something with Obamacare, and that will work out. But very importantly, a big percentage of people will be able to get health care, and they'll be able to go across state lines. They'll be able to buy from many, many competitors, and meaning the insurance companies, and it will not cost our country anything, but they'll have great health insurance again.
And welcome back here to News Now. We're taking a look here at an astronaut high above the Earth right now as they are working on the International Space Station, making some improvements as well as also adding some new high-definition cameras there. So that's always a great look. Take a look at that astronaut. Let's all wave to him. Hello there, or hi above. Hi, everybody. Mike Page here as we continue on here with News Now. Here's what we got set up for you for the rest of the day. Take a look here. This is what we're dealing with right now. We are waiting for White House press briefing. That's supposed to start in the next 10 minutes. We're also hearing reports that we will be getting a press conference momentarily on new accusations on the mega movie producer Harvey Weinstein. So more accusations coming out. We will continue to monitor these feeds here for you right here on News Now. And once one of them does start up, we will, of course, bring that to you right here on News Now. But taking it back up high above the Earth right now, this is about a 7-hour mission that astronauts are doing with this spacewalk. We're going to learn a little bit more from NASA about what really goes in to something that looks very, very complicated and you know, it does take a lot of time when you're working with a robotic arm as well as installing those new cameras. So let's listen in from a little bit from NASA. We'll continue to wait for those other feeds to come in. You're watching News Now.
Mark and Paulo will be helping Randy and Joe suit up. Once again, Paulo will be manning the Canadarm2, and this time with Mark assisting Paulo. The objectives for this last spacewalk in the series are to replace a redundant failed fuse on the external platform that's located on Dexter, the special purpose dexterous manipulator. We will also be adding a high-def camera to the starboard lower outboard camera group, and replacing the Destiny starboard camera, or the lab starboard camera that currently has a yellow hue to it. Continuing out lubrication of the newly installed Lee A, we will be lubricating the latch ball screws. Those are the ball screws that affect the latch operations. And we will also be removing some thermal blankets on a main bus switching unit that's a spare that will make it usable and compatible with Dexter operations in the future. Those are the main objectives, and so I'm going to hand it over to Tim to let you know a little bit about the arm and the lead. How?
All right, thank you, Judd. So the Canadian Space Agency is really pleased to be here today with our partner NASA to lay out this plan for milestone servicing of the Canadarm2. As Kenny said, it's busy times for robotics on space station, and indeed it seems like every year we're doing more than the year before, whether that's maintenance of the space station, handling and deploying new payloads, catching, releasing, or unloading new free-flying cargo vehicles. Now, since Canadarm2 was launched in 2001, we are more than 16 years into the life of our system. The ARM hardware is divided into components that can be replaced on orbit. So each of the 2 end effectors at each end, each of the 7 ARM joints, or the avionics boxes, or the cameras on the arm booms, those are all individually replaceable on orbit, either robotically or by spacewalking astronauts. Now, as Judd said, the operation we're going to perform this Thursday will be replacing the end effector at the A end of the arm, the 2 ends A and B, and swapping that with a similar unit on our mobile base system on the mobile transporter. Now, the Lee latching end effector, we call it a Lee. This is the mechanism, a set of mechanisms that does all the heavy lifting, does all the mechanical attachment when the arm walks end over end and establishes a new base point, when it picks up our 2-armed robot Dexter to go do station maintenance, or when it catches or releases free-flying cargo vehicles. The Lee itself is a very complex package. There are a lot of mechanisms, lots of onboard avionics, a camera, a force and moment sensor all in here. It may be one of the most complex electromechanical packages that we've flown in space. The flight unit, it's a little over 1 meter long, weighs a little more than 200 kilograms. And as I said, there is, in addition to the Lees at both ends of the arm, there's one on Dexter, but also one on the mobile base, which we use as a temporary stowage point for large items, whether they're used in maintenance or whether they're bringing spare parts, as when we replaced a bunch of station batteries back in January. The pallet with all those new batteries was placed on that end effector on the mobile base while all that work was done. Now, as Kenny mentioned, we've been tracking degradation in the Canadarm2 Lees actually for some years now. Since these components are well beyond their design life, this really is expected wear and tear on the arm. And it's been manifesting itself partly as increased motor currents in the mechanisms on board, and particularly the latches. The system is designed to last a long time, and indeed it's designed to power through obstacles as they come up. So we've seen the latch mechanisms draw more and more motor current. And as we also mentioned here just now, We were going to do a walk-off on August 22nd. We actually had the latches stall during that operation, which is quite unusual. Took a really good look at all the data that we're seeing, and basically that Lee A latch mechanism is telling us that it's time. So the plan is this Thursday we're going to swap Lee A onto with the end effector on the mobile base, and effectively immediately restoring Canadarm2 to a more operational state, ready to go do more robotics work. Now, after this month's set of EVAs, there'll be at least one more EVA in January. At the end of that time, we'll have moved some hardware around. At that time, Lee A will be coming inside the space station for return to the ground, specifically to our prime contractor in Brampton, Ontario, McDonnell Detweiler, and they will set about the refurbishment of that complex unit and preparing it for eventual reflight as a spare. What is now Lee B of the arm will end up as that end effector on the mobile base, stowing large items as they're needed. And we'll be utilizing another spare Lee, which is stored currently out on the space station truss. So that's about it. It's worth noting that we have continued to support station ops all during this period. We were able to successfully release the SpaceX 12 Dragon vehicle on time, and that went perfectly nominally. It did not use that latch mechanism in the end effector, and that went just fine. And we're excited to be here today, working with our partner, working to keep the Canadian robots working in support of Space Station.
Good afternoon. I'm Jacqueline Kagi, and I'm the lead for US EVA 44 to replace the Lee Alpha on the robotic arm. My task team, Farouk Greer, and I kicked off development of this EVA back in July. And then when the issues appeared in August, we switched from the Lee Bravo to a Lee Alpha changeout. With the help of my EMU team, Megan and Goose, and the increment team, Keith, Costa, and Darren, we're well prepared for this Thursday's EVA. The overall flow of our EVA is pretty straightforward, so I'll walk you through it. If we could get the Doug animation going. The crew egresses the airlock, and we plan to carry one bag of tools to the worksite on EV1. EV2 will gather a foot restraint from ESP2 prior to heading to the worksite. Our worksite is near the center of station for the entire EVA. We base our tools on the CETA cart, and then we set up foot restraints on face one of the truss to enable us to reach the arm. The crew ingresses the foot restraints, and the arm flies in between them to allow for the changeout. There are 2 blankets that need to be released to uncover the joint interface. Since the crew cannot reach all 6 EDFs, or the bolts that we need to release at one point in time, we will release 2, rotate the arm, then we will power down and drive the demate connector, and finally release the other 4. The degraded joint will be removed, and the crew will translate it to the CETA cart to a temp stow location. Next, the crew will work on the POA Lee, which is our spare. After power down and demate of the connector, the crew works together to release all 6 EDFs in a star pattern. They release the Lee and translate it to the arm worksite. The crew inspects the interfaces prior to mating, and then they will install 4 bolts to an initial torque. We will power up the arm and rotate it so they can reach the other 2 bolts. Do those to a final torque, and then we will rotate it again to be able to do a final torque on the first 4 bolts. Time permitting, pictures of the bolt final config will be taken prior to putting the MLI blankets back on. Next, the crew will retrieve the degraded Lee from the CETA cart and move it to the POA. They will install all 6 bolts to a final torque, And then finally, they will start cleanup from the EVA. They'll gather all their tools and their foot restraints, and they will place the foot restraints in ideal locations for the next EVA. After that, they will return to the airlock for ingress.
Wow, that is some amazing stuff there. I still can't believe that they could get a shot right there with the astronaut doing that live up there in space. Sometimes I can't even get a reception from my cell phone in my apartment there. So that is some cool stuff there. Still waiting, folks, on the White House. Still waiting on this White House press briefing. That should be coming up at any moment now. You're watching News Now. Welcome back here to News Now. As you can see, Sarah Huckabee Sanders coming to the podium. Perfect time to come back, everybody.
Yeah. Hope everybody had a nice Columbus Day. Got to take a little break. I'm sure you missed me. Let me start by saying that our hearts go out to the people of California who are enduring the wildfires taking place now. The loss of homes and burning of precious land is heartbreaking, but the loss of life is truly devastating. Last night, the president spoke with Governor Jerry Brown, and today he approved an expedited major disaster declaration for California, along with fire management assistance grants. The administration is working closely with state and local officials to ensure the people of California are receiving the support they need. Staying on the disaster relief front, I'd like to share some positive news from Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands today. School resumed in the U.S. Virgin Islands this week. 7 schools opened today, powered by generators, and 11 more are scheduled to open next week. Additionally, in Puerto Rico, FEMA is hosting a jobs fair to hire 1,200 Puerto Ricans to help with the relief efforts and boost the local economy. The road to recovery is long, and there is so much work left to do, but the resilience of the people of Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands continues to inspire us all. We will be with them throughout this entire process, and we are confident they will come back stronger than ever before. Over the weekend, we released the President's 3 primary immigration policy objectives, which should be included in any immigration legislation Congress considers. The President has presented common-sense immigration reforms with broad bipartisan support that finally puts hardworking Americans first. According to a recent poll, over 70% of the American people support more ICE officers and strengthening penalties against illegal immigrants who are repeat violators of our laws. 2 in 3 Americans implement a merit-based immigration system that looks out for working-class Americans, ideas that even Bernie Sanders has supported in the past. The President's priorities also include a southern border wall like what the Democrats voted for in the 2006 Secure Fences Act. These are not radical proposals. Many have gotten bipartisan support in the past. The Trump administration is ready to work with Congress to achieve these policy objectives and to ensure safe and lawful admissions, defend the safety and security of our country, and protect American workers and taxpayers. Today, the First Lady flew to West Virginia to visit Lily's Place, the nation's first nonprofit infant recovery center that also provides service to parents and families dealing with addiction. Lily's house treats infants for neonatal abstinence syndrome, which occurs when a baby withdraws from drugs he or she was exposed to in the womb before birth. According to the Government Accountability Office, an American baby is born with NAS every 25 minutes, and 40% of babies born addicted to opioids go into the foster system. Each situation is a tragedy, and the First Lady is doing incredible work to raise awareness about this important issue. Looking ahead to tomorrow, the President will continue his push to provide tax relief to hardworking Americans. He'll be traveling to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to deliver remarks. In attendance at the event will be hundreds of truckers. They keep our economy moving, literally, and they are excited about the President's tax reform plan, which will create more jobs and empower workers and families to keep more of their hard-earned money. Before I take your questions, I'd like to offer an invitation to all of the White House press corps to bring, on behalf of the President, the First Lady, and the administration, to bring your children to the Eisenhower Executive Office Building on October 27th to celebrate Halloween, where there will be lots of fun and I'm sure lots of candy, so we can sugar your kids up and send them back home to you. And with that, I'll take your questions. John.
Sarah, over the weekend, the President said that he wished his Secretary of State was a little tougher, and now today he is suggesting that Secretary Tillerson has a lower IQ than he does. So my question is, why would the President want somebody who he thinks is neither tough nor particularly smart as a Secretary of State?
The President certainly never implied that the Secretary of State was not incredibly intelligent. He made a joke, nothing more than that. He has full confidence. He has full confidence in the Secretary of State. They had a great visit earlier today, and they're working hand in hand to move the President's agenda forward. Matthew.
Thanks, Sarah. Over the weekend, Senator Bob Corker called the White House an adult daycare center, said the President could lead the country into World War III, and said that, quote, "He concerns me, he would have to concern anyone who cares about our nation." What can you tell us a little about the internal reaction to such a senior Republican making comments like that? And is there concern that other top Republicans could make similar comments? Look,
Senator Corker is certainly entitled to his own opinion, but he's not entitled to his own facts. The fact is, this President has been an incredibly strong leader on foreign policy and national security, and he's been a leader on this front. And I think that's been seen and demonstrated time and time again since he took office. And a few examples: over 20 nations to significantly reduce economic and diplomatic ties with North Korea, further isolating them. He's gotten China and Russia to sign on to the toughest UN sanctions against North Korea ever. His new strategy is destroying ISIS. We have tremendous battlefield gains throughout Iraq and Syria. With Europe, he's gotten more NATO allies to pay their fair share, and he's strengthening that alliance. We're also exporting energy like coal and natural gas to Eastern Europe. His vision of principled realism is creating calm around the world and defeating our enemies. Again, Senator Corker may have an opinion, but the facts certainly don't lie. The President's been very successful on this front. John?
Sarah, two questions for you, if I could. First of all, going into the weekend, the President sent his principles for the Dreamers legislation up to Capitol Hill. Included in it was a provision for building the wall. The president had earlier said that he would do the wall at a later time, do the Dreamers first, push some security measures, and then do the wall later. Did he change the goalposts?
No, the president simply stating his priorities for what responsible immigration reform should look like, and that includes those 3 big priorities. That's what he's promised Congress he would lay out. That's exactly what he did. And I don't think we've been inconsistent on that front, and certainly not unclear. The president has talked about his priorities repeatedly, and in this case, over the weekend, laid them out in a very detailed fashion.
Is he insistent that the wall be part of any DACA legislation?
Look, I'm not going to stand up here and negotiate from the podium with you guys. That's something for the president and Congress to work out, but we're laying out our priorities. That's exactly what we put in that document, and we're going to work with Congress to try to get the most responsible immigration reform package that we can.
And question 2, speaking of goalposts.
That was like 3 questions already.
No, there's a question follow-up question 2.
Good thing he's a reporter and not a math teacher.
I was horrible at that. NFL Commissioner Goodell sent a letter to owners and chief executives of all of the NFL teams saying, like many of our fans, we believe that everyone should stand for the national anthem. It's an important moment in our game. We want to honor our flag and our country, and our fans expect that of us. He's having a meeting next week to discuss all of this. Given the position of the league as articulated there by Commissioner Goodell, what's the White House reaction to what it looks like the NFL is going to do going forward?
I think we would certainly support the NFL coming out and asking players to stand, just as the president has done. We support the national anthem, the flag, and the men and women who fought to defend it. And our position hasn't changed on that front. We're glad to see the NFL taking positive steps in that direction. Justin.
I had 2, but I promise they're really just 2. The first is I wanted to ask about something the president said earlier in the Oval about tax reform. He suggested that there'd be adjustments to strengthen the tax framework, and obviously we know that lawmakers need to fill it out, but by saying, adjustment, it suggests some sort of change. So I'm wondering if there are going to be changes to that framework, and if so, if it might be things like modifying the state or local deductions or changing the pass-through for business interest rates that we've heard kind of floating out there.
We don't have any adjustments to make to the framework at this time. I think our kind of key principles that we've laid out remain the same, and no changes to announce today. Francesca.
Thank you, Sarah. 2 of the president's allies have suggested that Senator Corker resign. Does the president think that Senator Corker should resign?
I think that's a decision for Senator Corker and the people of Tennessee, not for us to decide.
And a follow-up on the Senator Corker question. The president also said this weekend that Senator Corker was largely responsible for the Iran deal, which the president has hinted that he wants to renegotiate. That was a deal that was negotiated by Barack Obama's administration. Why does the president think that that was largely Bob Corker's fault?
Senator Corker worked with Nancy Pelosi and the Obama administration to pave the way for that legislation and basically rolled out the red carpet for the Iran deal. I mean, those are pretty factual. John?
Thanks, Sarah. Over the last few months, the president has criticized a number of senior Republicans, sometimes in very personal terms. Senator Murkowski, Senator Flake, Leader McConnell, most recently Senator Bob Corker. What do you say to critics who say that the president is alienating himself from Republicans that he will need to move his legislation forward?
I don't think he's alienated anyone. I think that Congress has alienated themselves by not actually getting the job done that the people of this country elected them to do. They all promised and campaigned on repealing and replacing Obamacare. They haven't done that. They've campaigned on tax reform. Hopefully we see that happen. We're certainly committed to that and think we'll get there. But time and time again, Congress has made promises and failed to deliver. If anyone's being alienated, it's people that are promising things and not delivering on them.
One more, Sarah, on the Iran.
I'm going to skip around so I can try to get to more people. Jessica.
You talked last week about the fact that you plan to roll out a comprehensive plan on Iran, and we also know the president's feelings on decertification. But what I'm not clear on is how you see the connection. How does decertifying the Iran nuclear deal lead to an opportunity to negotiate on all of these other issues that you have have with Iran, like exporting terrorism and cyber crimes, et cetera?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president's announcement on this, but he'll make that later this week, and we'll be happy to take more of those questions after that announcement is made.
Sarah, in a tweet this morning, the president referred to Little, L-I-T-T-L-E, Bob Corker again. I'm wondering if the White House continues to work or continues to plan to work with Senator Corker's team to amend the law that gives oversight to the Iran Accord that you've already said you don't like. Are you working with him to change that law? Are you still willing to?
We're certainly still willing to work with anybody that wants to come and actually put forth real solutions and be part of those solutions and not part of the problem. Charlie?
Specifically on Iran, you are?
Again, we'll be happy to work with all parties on, bettering the American people. And if he wants to be part of that, we'd certainly be happy to talk about it. Charlie?
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton just issued a statement condemning the reported behavior of one of her prominent Hollywood donors, Harvey Weinstein. The president also said he wasn't surprised by the news and said that he had known Harvey Weinstein for some time. My question is, does the president have a reaction to Clinton's statement? And secondly, does he have his own reaction? How much did he know about Harvey Weinstein's behavior? And what's his response today?
I don't know if he's seen the Secretary Clinton's statement, so I haven't had a chance to talk to him about that, so I wouldn't want to weigh in on what his reaction might be on that front.
About his response, he said that he had known him for a long time, known Weinstein for a long time.
I think that statement speaks for itself. There's nothing to add. Olivia?
Thanks, Sarah. I know he's going to announce it later this week, but has the president reached a decision on whether to recertify Iran or not?
The president's reached a decision on a overall Iran strategy and wants to make sure that we have a broad policy to deal with that, not just one part of it, as I said last week, to deal with all of the problems of Iran being a bad actor. Beyond that, I don't have anything to add today at that point.
Would you like to see Congress do away with the 90-day recurring certification?
I'll let the president speak to that later this week. Chair.
What does the president intend to do with his executive order on health care reform? And secondly, the president, when he was rescinding DACA, said that one of the reasons he was doing that was because it was inappropriate for the Obama administration to do with executive order what couldn't get done with legislation. Why the difference when it comes to health care?
Look, I think that the American people have demanded something happen. They have elected a number of different people to Congress to deal specifically with this issue. You can see that reflected in the number of people that campaigned on that and later went on to win office. And due to Congress failing to act, it's no surprise that the president is going to try to take action to provide flexibility and relief to the many Americans who continue to suffer under Obamacare. I think that's a positive step forward, and we'll have more details moving forward.
What exactly is this EO going to do? What is he going to try to do to try to improve? We've gotten some generalities from the president, but not a lot of specifics about what he can do with executive orders and why it might be effective when it comes to lowering costs. Again, the promises were pretty high, we heard. We're going to
the goal is to take action as much as we can to help provide that flexibility and that relief. That's what the president's going to do. He's going to make an announcement on that later this week, and we'll see that again by the end of Friday. John?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Two questions. The president said that Senator Corker asked to be Secretary of State when they met privately before he took office. That is almost historically unknown that someone would actually ask for a cabinet position in a meeting with the president, at least in the 21st and 20th centuries. Does he stand by that statement completely, that the senator asked to be named to the position of Secretary of State?
I haven't talked to him specifically about that, but I would certainly imagine the president wholeheartedly stands by his statement on that. Trey?
The other thing. Catalonia had its vote. The president had said the week before when he was with Prime Minister Rajoy, he supported a unified Spain. Today, the president of the state of Catalonia said he would not declare independence, but would seek independence from Spain through negotiations at this time. What's the administration's position on that?
Our position hasn't changed, but we would, certainly welcome the president of Spain and conversations between us and them and moving forward. But there's nothing different from what the president said when he was here a couple weeks ago.
So you welcome talk with Catalonia and Spain?
I think that's up for the people of Spain and Catalonia to decide, but our position is still consistent with what the president said a couple weeks ago. Trey.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a couple questions for you. Do you stand by your statement that Bob Corker rolled out the red carpet for the Iran deal?
I do. I just made it about 10 minutes ago.
Bob Corker originally opposed the Iran deal and even led a bipartisan effort on Capitol Hill to have it reviewed by Congress, despite former President Obama not wanting that review to take place. How can you say that he rolled out the red carpet for the deal then?
He worked with them on the INARA legislation that rolled that out. That's what helped, I think, put things in motion. He may have voted against the deal ultimately, but he not only allowed the deal to happen, he gave it credibility. And I stand by my statement.
And I have one quick follow-up, Sarah, on taxes. The president repeated this claim in the Oval Office today, saying we're the highest tax nation in the world. Why does the president keep saying this? It's not true overall.
We are the highest taxed corporate tax in the developed economy. That's a fact.
But that's not what the president said.
That's what he's talking about. We are the highest corporate taxed country in the developed economies across the globe.
Sarah, so that's accurate, but the president keeps repeating this claim that we're the highest tax nation.
And that's what.
Welcome back to News Now. Sarah Huckabee Sanders still at the White House press briefing podium. Let's listen in.
Sorry, we're just going to have to agree to disagree.
In the Forbes interview, the president talked about economic development bills. Does he see that as a way to basically get tax reform through? Are they going to work hand in glove?
We certainly want to move tax reform through. I think the president's position, American companies have been forced to send their operations and, more importantly, a lot of their jobs overseas due to decades of increased taxes and overregulation. In addition to historic tax and regulatory reform, the president's looking at additional ways to bring jobs and profits back to our shores.
Sarah, the Chamber of Commerce said today that the White House is putting poison pills in the NAFTA negotiations to make them unpalatable. Does the president want these talks to continue, or does he want these harsher measures that the United States is proposing to end the talks?
The president wants to continue the conversation, but the president's ultimate goal is to make sure that we get the best deal for Americans as possible, and certainly.
All right, everybody, we are going to leave the White House press briefing room. We are going to go now to L.A., where attorney Gloria Allred is with an actress and screenwriter about new allegations with the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. Let's listen in right now. This is live in L.A.
Would you mind moving a little bit? Perfect. Thank you. Can I be back a little bit? Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. All right. David, you ready? Okay. Okay. Thank you for coming today, and unfortunately we didn't know about the fire drill in advance, so we apologize for the delay. I'll be making a statement, and then our client will be making a statement. And then I will be answering questions. She will not be answering questions. Today, a new accuser of Harvey Weinstein is speaking out about the sexual harassment that she alleges that she endured as a young actress and screenwriter who, at the request of Mr. Weinstein, was simply pitching her screenplay to him at the Sundance Film Festival. Louisette Geis worked in the film and music industry for over 20 years. Following her dream, she made a point to graduate early and with honors so that she could move to Los Angeles and start her career. Education was key to Louisette, and she studied with the top teachers in film for acting, writing, and directing, which led her to land several roles fairly early on The Drew Carey Show, 2.5 Men, and King of Queens, to name just a few. She was also a dedicated screenwriter and went on to sing on many national commercials and owned an award-winning music company. Louisette had her second baby girl only 6 weeks ago. She is a mother of 2 young girls. She was a guardian to a young girl, and she's a stepmom to 2 boys. She made an abrupt departure from the film industry in 2009 and now works in real estate. She is speaking out today because even though Harvey Weinstein has been terminated from his employment with the Weinstein Company, she and I both feel that there has not yet been justice for many women who allege that they were victims of sexual harassment. Although there are reports that Mr. Weinstein entered into settlements with 8 women who allege that they were sexually harassed by Mr. Weinstein, many more women who allege that they were victims never filed claims or lawsuits against him. Many of these women feared the power that Mr. Weinstein had and were concerned that if they took legal action or spoke out, that he could ruin their careers. In addition, many believed that nobody would believe them. A number of accusers have contacted me about their allegations, but I've had to inform them that the statute of limitations, that arbitrary time period set by law, has expired and is therefore too late for them to assert a legal claim. Mr. Weinstein could, however, decide that he would like to resolve these allegations and waive and agree not to assert the statute of limitations. That is exactly what we believe that he should do. Mr. Weinstein may believe that some of these claims are false, or he may believe that some are true. He may believe that he has not had his day in court on these allegations and that he has not been treated fairly. Many women who allege that they are his victims feel the same way. I believe that there is a way to provide justice for these alleged victims and for Mr. Weinstein. I am inviting him to agree to engage in an arbitration of these claims with these alleged victims and with an agreed-upon retired judge. The women could present their claims of sexual harassment, and Mr. Weinstein can present his defense. If the judge finds in favor of the victims, the judge could award damages according to proof at trial. If Mr. Weinstein prevails, he would be able to announce the result to the public. In the alternative, he could also agree to a confidential mediation. This is a process to resolve these claims. This proposal is similar to what I suggested to Bill Cosby. He was not wise enough, however, to accept my invitation to resolve the allegations against him. Will Mr. Weinstein accept the offer of a process that is fair to him and will help to provide a system of justice to his accusers? We will have to wait and see. I believe that one day Mr. Weinstein will wish to return as a producer in Hollywood. This is a positive step that he could take to help to restore his battered reputation. It is not enough for him to acknowledge pain that he has caused and to seek therapy. He needs to go further and provide justice to these women who allege that they are his victims. Louisette Geis is very brave in her decision to speak out today. She has decided to share what she alleges was her experience because she knows that there are many others who still live in fear and who do not yet have a voice. She's doing this for them and for her daughters. I am honored to represent her and look forward to Mr. Weinstein's response. And now I'd like to present Louisette Geis. Would you change places with me?
I first met Harvey Weinstein at the Cannes Film Festival. I next saw him at the Sundance Film Festival in 2008. He invited me to his premiere of Where in the World is Osama bin Laden? After the premiere, he asked me about my music company and the script that I had written and was pitching at the festival. We agreed to meet at the hotel restaurant where we both were staying. When we arrived, we were asked to leave shortly after at the restaurant as they were closing. Harvey then offered to reconvene the meeting in his office, which was adjacent to his hotel room. Obviously, I was hesitant. I had heard some stories previously about Harvey's behavior with women. So there was a hotel security camera right above us, and I said to him, "I will take this meeting with you if you will shake my hand that you will not touch me." And he shook my hand and kind of laughed it off. We went to his office, and we had a great conversation about his current film and the film that I was pitching. He seemed genuinely interested, and I was excited. After about 30 minutes, he asked to excuse himself and go to the bathroom. He returned in nothing but a robe with the front open, and he was buck naked. He told me to keep talking about my film and that he was going to hop into his hot tub that was adjacent to the room, just steps away. When I finished my pitch, I was obviously nervous, and he just kept asking me to watch him masturbate. I told him I was leaving. He quickly got it out of the tub and grabbed my forearm as I was trying to grab my purse, and he led me to his bathroom, pleading that I just watch him masturbate. My heart was racing, and I was very scared. I pulled my arm away, finally, and headed to the door. He started following me and telling me that he could introduce me to Bob Weinstein and that I could get a 3-picture deal and that he would greenlight my script. But I had to watch him masturbate. I was on the verge of tears, but I pulled it together and quickly exited. I told my sister, and I told a good friend of mine immediately after. And over the years, when people asked me why I got out of the movie industry, I would tell them this story. Even though my parents raised me to be a strong and independent woman, I never, ever, ever thought that I would have any chance to stand up for myself against Harvey Weinstein. I knew if I said anything that he would have a ton of lawyers on my back, and no one would trust me over him. I know I'm not special. I know that this has happened to many women, and it's the fear and pain of sexual harassment that is released on one's mind, body, and soul that I'm trying to stop. Sexual harassment has become commonplace in the entertainment industry, and to be fair, most women that I know have a story about being sexually harassed or abused in this business. I am only now feeling confident enough to come forward. I know that Harvey has been fired, and I know that he said he needs help. But he's also saying that he wants to sue the New York Times for defamation and that he's pleading with the Hollywood elite to give him a second chance. He's breeding doubt about our stories, that women are just making this up. And he's making light of it by saying that this is such a good story, he wants to buy the movie rights. I do not think that Harvey Weinstein understands or comprehends how much pain and suffering this brings to me and scores of other women. The window to end this soul-crushing behavior of sexually harassing women is only now just recently opened. I think that we can all feel that we're really on the precipice of empowerment here and a journey of revolution. I implore other women to please stand up and to come forward. I know there's many women who have experienced just what I've experienced. Let us be the change we want to see in this world. Let's stop talking about making a change and actually make a change. Let's tuck our babies in tonight and know that we did everything that we can for them to make this world a better place. When I think of my mom, who has many a story like this, and Gloria, and the countless other women who've traveled the road less traveled to help me rise up and be a confident mom and professional, I'm really humbled by their experiences and their courage. Sexual harassment in the entertainment industry needs to stop, and it needs to stop now.
Okay, I'll be happy to take some questions. Louisette is not going to be taking questions right now.
What year did this happen?
2008.
What's the statute of limitations?
The statute of limitations in Utah, which is where it happened, according to Louisette, is 4 years. And so that statute of limitations has expired.
What are you hoping for? I mean, have you been contacted by other women as well?
Yes.
How many?
I'm not going to do a count, but it's some of them are also in other areas of the country. And so therefore, we're not able to be here today.
Are these in addition to the ones already named by the New York Times and the New York?
Yes.
Gloria, in your career, have you been hearing about rumors from Harvey for a while? I imagine that people have been coming to you throughout the years. These allegations new to you?
No.
Why not come forward sooner with any other clients in the past?
I have no comment on that question.
What will it take to see from Harvey to accept repairing his reputation? What are you hoping to get from Harvey out of this?
Justice.
Did you advise?
I mean, there has been quite a bit of focus on him, and that's fine. But what about the persons who allege that they are victims who are not A-list stars? And in some cases, some people have contacted me, were not actresses. But that's all I'll say. I'm not going to identify them further.
Gloria, you had mentioned that you were advising or hoping that Harvey Weinstein would perhaps get involved in some confidential mediation.
I'm suggesting the process of a confidential mediation, which is essentially a settlement process where we could also have a retired judge or a professional mediator. Or in addition to that, or rather instead of that, there could be an arbitration. Both of those are what we call alternative dispute resolution processes. An arbitration is a trial. The mediation is essentially a negotiating session to attempt to reach a settlement. But an arbitration is an actual trial by a retired judge. That could happen much sooner than if a lawsuit were filed and then had to wait in line perhaps for years in order to be tried.
Do you currently have...
And pardon me?
I was going to say, do you currently have any lawsuits?
Pending against Mr. Weinstein?
Correct.
No.
If Harvey is protected by the statute of limitations, why would he give up that to go into arbitration?
The question is if Mr. Weinstein is currently able to assert at what we call an affirmative defense of the statute of limitations, in other words, that it's too late, then why would he enter into a mediation process or an arbitration process? And the answer is very simple, that if as and when he chooses to allow a process where there can be justice for him and for persons who allege they are victims, I think that will go a long way to helping to restore his reputation. So I find that to be in his own self-interest for the future, and in addition, in the interest of persons who allege they are victims, because there would be due process for both. In other words, both or all would testify under oath, present their evidence, he could present his defenses, and then a neutral person, namely a retired judge, could make a decision. And if he is found not to be liable for the allegations that any alleged victim or victims make against him, we are suggesting that we would be agreeable to his having that decision announced to the press. So it gives him a day in court. It gives them a day in court. It gives an opportunity for there to be justice and for people, all of them, to testify under oath, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help them God. And I think that would be a fair process. Why would he do it? Because I think he wants to work in this town again. And I think that that is an invitation to help. It's not instead of therapy. It's in addition to. And in the event that he were able to, or decided to, after consultation with his lawyers, accept our invitation to do that, then I feel that those alleged victims who have contacted me would feel much better about Mr. Weinstein.
Ms. Allred, what would justice for the victims look like in this case?
Justice for the victims would be for them to be able to have a fair process, such as I described, in order for a neutral person, a retired judge, to decide their claims. And of course, then if the judge decides in their favor, then they could receive compensation according to proof of trial for whatever damages they can prove, which might include a need for therapy bills, medical bills, if they would be able to present any evidence of physical injuries, compensation for their pain and suffering. These would be possible remedies. But of course, if they don't have sufficient evidence that and cannot prove their allegations by a preponderance of the evidence, which is the standard for a civil case, then they will not prevail. So it seems fair, it seems just, and I think it's overdue.
Do you think Ms. Guise has the evidence?
Pardon me?
Does your client have the evidence to prove her allegations?
She has evidence that she is looking forward to being able to present to a judge in this process. And we're not going to detail what that is, but it's in addition to the people that she told, which would corroborate her contemporaneous report that, in fact, he had done what she alleged. But we have evidence beyond that, which we're not willing to disclose at this point, but we would present in an arbitration process.
Ms. Allred, did you have any conversations with your daughter before she removed herself from an advisory role?
No. She's in a separate law firm. She makes her own decisions, and I'm very proud of her, and I love her and respect her, as I've said. She doesn't decide who I represent. I don't decide who she represents, or if, as, and when anybody should discontinue representation of any client. We're completely separate firms.
Are you at least relieved that you wouldn't be forced into a scenario?
I'm sorry, I can't hear your question.
Are you at least relieved that you're not going to be in a scenario where you may end up on different sides?
Actually, no, because she informed me that she was never retained to represent him in any process involving any claim against him.
What do you think of emails that came out regarding your daughter suggesting a defense, showing Harvey with some of the alleged accusers in friendly position?
Yeah, I don't have any comment on anything that she has said because our focus today is for victims, or persons who allege they are victims, and what Mr. Weinstein can do that could result in a positive outcome. That's our focus, yes.
If Mr. Weinstein doesn't take you up on your invitation, what's your next course of action?
We'll have to wait and see.
In a case like this, you obviously can go after Harvey. Can you go after the company as well?
We don't have any comment on whether we would or could go after the Weinstein company.
What do you think of Angelina Jolie and Gwyneth Paltrow coming out today? Why do you think they stayed silent for so long?
I don't know what Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie knew and when they knew it. So I don't have any comment on why they stayed silent or if they stayed silent and why they're coming out now. But I do think that it's important, and I'm glad that they have both made statements about this, and I'm glad that Meryl Streep did, and Judi Dench, and anyone else, because women's voices matter. Women are now empowered, and the casting couch scenario is just going to have to end, because otherwise there are going to be serious consequences, as there are right now for Mr. Weinstein. It's just not acceptable anymore. It's not going to be tolerated. And, women are not going to be silenced anymore.
Your client, before she met with him in the hotel room, it sounds like she knew, she was very, very aware of what could possibly happen by shaking his hand in front of a camera, making him promise. I mean, it seemed like she was very confident it was going to happen. How did she know that? I mean, how talked about is Harvey's antics in Hollywood for her to know, to go that far to make sure that wouldn't happen?
She didn't know that it would happen, but of course she had heard rumors, and this is why she wanted to be clear with him that this is not something she was.
Some explosive new allegations. The press conference will continue right now on fox10phoenix.com, as well as our Fox 10 Phoenix Facebook page. That will continue right here on News Now.
Hollywood.
Any other persons have contacted me about their accusations against anyone else in Hollywood. Let's just put it this way. That wouldn't be a surprise to me. And I'm contacted by many people about many issues.
Do you have the camera footage that you're alleging?
We're not going to comment on what specific evidence we would present if, as and when, Mr. Weinstein did accept our invitation to enter into a process which could lead to justice, or as much justice as is possible under the circumstances.
Did your client ever hear or see Harvey Weinstein again after that night?
We will answer that question at another point.
Because he has a history of following up with his victims, trying to buy them gifts, buy his way out of it. Did that happen with your client at all?
There were no gifts.
Gloria, when you were talking about the statute of limitations, getting justice, there was a case 2 years ago, an Italian model in New York. She did go to the police. She was, recorded with him. The recording was published today by the New Yorker. Can you talk at all about that case and the DA in New York declined to prosecute? What are your thoughts after listening to that recording?
I've heard about that story, and I don't have any comment on the New York DA declining to prosecute because I don't know what evidence the DA had at that time. Also, the burden in a criminal case is up here, beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden in a civil case is down here by preponderance of the evidence, or for punitive damages somewhere in between, which would be by clear and convincing evidence. So I don't know what the DA had at that time, or what her allegations and evidence were. So I can't comment on that.
Or are you aware of other allegations from potential clients or otherwise that do fall within the statute of limitations and thus that he could be liable for?
I can't comment on that at this time. But in the event that Mr. Weinstein's lawyers contact me, I'd be happy to discuss that with them.
Gloria, is there any outcome in which you feel brings justice to the victims that addresses it in a more systemic way? I mean, there's a lot of reports about this, the number of people involved in perhaps procuring women for Harvey. Is there anything that you think could address it in a more systemic way?
Well, I mean, I think the press is doing a very good job in locating and discovering in their investigation many facts. I don't know whether all those facts are true or not. Having said that, I mean, there are many accusers who do not wish to be public. That's one of the reasons that Louisette is speaking out today, because she's doing this also for them. And in a mediation or arbitration process, of course, their names would be provided to Mr. Weinstein, but they would not need to be made public. And so this would protect them if they do not wish to disclose their names to the public or speak out. And also, they would have access to justice through a system which could provide that to them, which I think is important.
If he accepts your offer, would this open the process to other alleged victims and their attorneys possibly to work through it as well with you?
We'd be open to that, assuming Mr. Weinstein and his attorneys were open to that. In other words, we could work towards a global resolution of these allegations.
What about Harvey's wife? How do you feel about the position that she's in now, and if any of your clients ever tried to communicate with her?
I don't have any comment about his wife. I mean, she can make a comment about what she knows or doesn't know or did know or didn't know if she chooses to, but I mean, I always feel that marriages are very complicated relationships, and our focus is on Mr. Weinstein and not on his wife.
Gloria, do you believe Mr. Weinstein is the tip of the iceberg and that there will be other powerful people in Hollywood exposed in this way?
That's possible. I mean, the days of sense of entitlement, arrogance of power, my girl, I can take advantage of anyone seeking employment or attempting to retain the employment they have, or being in fear of suffering some negative job impact because they decline sexual advances. I mean, those days are at an end. In terms of women knowing that they have rights and they can assert those rights. So I would say if there are any high-profile employers or executives who are still sexually harassing women or men, then they should understand they're acting at their peril and they're taking an enormous risk. But some people who do that are risk takers. But the old adage of never underestimate a woman could never be truer than it is today, especially if that woman is someone seeking employment or seeking to retain their employment. Because there are many lawyers who will help them and advise them in reference to what they can do if they are sexually harassed on the job. So, anything else you'd like to say? Anything further, and then we'll go. Thank you very much for coming, and I know some of you have emailed, and I will respond to those emails. She's not going to do any interviews right now. after this press conference, but thank you.
Just for background, this is for background on the statute of limitations waiver issue, so you understand that. It's not a bar. The civil statute of limitations is not a bar. Criminal statute of limitations bars. You're beyond, you can't file, the DA can't file. Civil statute of limitations is waivable. So if the defense either doesn't assert it in their papers responding or decides not to waive it, the case goes forward. It's not a bar. Never for any civil statute of limitations. So it can be waived.
In a civil case, there's actually one state in which that I know of that could also be waived in a criminal case, but without getting into that. This is Michael Morocco, my law partner of almost 42 years, and Michael has also been an arbitrator, and he has been a mediator, so he is, you don't have to be a judge to be an arbitrator, but he has been a professional arbitrator, as well as someone who litigates sexual harassment cases. All right?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
State Department in their activities. Turkey had arrested this year 2 of our locally employed staff in different locations, and then had called in a 3rd staff member just over the weekend of the United States. So we can confirm over the weekend that a 3rd embassy staff member was summoned by Turkish authorities. That staff member, though, has not been formally arrested. These actions are deeply disturbing to us. Ambassador John Bass, who's our U.S. ambassador to Turkey, addressed this extensively over the weekend. We remain very concerned with the situation over there. And just for some folks who perhaps haven't followed this as closely, I want to read you a little bit of what Ambassador Bass had to say about that over the weekend. He said, last week, for the 2nd time this year, a Turkish staff member of our diplomatic mission was arrested by Turkish authorities. Despite our best efforts to learn the reasons for this arrest, we've been unable to determine why it occurred or what, if any, evidence exists against the employee. The employee works in an office devoted to strengthening law enforcement cooperation with the Turkish authorities and ensuring the security of Americans and Turkish citizens. He went on to say, let me be clear, strengthening law enforcement cooperation between the United States and Turkey was the employee's job. The arrest has raised questions about whether the goal of some officials is to disrupt the longstanding cooperation between Turkey and the United States. And that remains our, one of our chief questions for the Turkish government. What's going on here? What are they trying to accomplish by this behavior toward our locally employed staff? Our locally employed staff in this case in Turkey worked on law enforcement cooperation issues. We know that the Turkish government has basically rounded up about 200,000 people, accusing them of not only fomenting a coup but also supporting the Gulen movement. Our locally employed staff, part of their jobs, at least here, these 3 individuals, was working with law enforcement. And as a part of their job, that would require them to be on the phone with law enforcement officials and other investigators. And when the government of Turkey starts to question our locally employed staff's ability to do that, we have some very serious questions about it.
Well, what do you think of their literally word-for-word response to the initial announcement from the embassy, apart from the kind of snark of it? Do you think that they have reason to doubt the U.S. government's commitment for the safety and security of their properties here?
I'm sorry, I'm not following that part.
Well, so you guys in your statement said that you had questions about the commitment of Turkey to protect your diplomatic facilities and employees. They turned around and said
we have not seen any evidence that indicates that our staff members were involved with what the government is accusing them of doing. I just want to make that clear.
Right, I understood. But they turned around, they took that statement, interchanged the U.S. for Turkey for the U.S., and said the exact same thing about you guys here, and that they questioned the commitment of the U.S. to protect their facilities. Yeah. Do you think that there's any merit to that allegation?
I don't think so. I think their facilities are probably quite safe, as are their people here.
Can I a couple more on this?
Sure.
First off, you saw that President Erdogan said that he doesn't recognize, the government of Turkey is not going to recognize Ambassador Bass because he did not take this, he took this decision unilaterally and not in, in concert with the rest of the U.S. government. Can you say that the State Department knew about what he was doing, and this was not like a unilateral decision that was not part of U.S. policy?
Our ambassadors tend to not do things unilaterally. We have a very close coordination and cooperation with our ambassadors, in particular Ambassador Bass. He and I have exchanged phone calls, meetings with one another on numerous occasions. He's always been incredibly responsive. He's one of the best ambassadors that we have out there. Proud to have him serving in Turkey and looking forward to having him in his next post. This was coordinated with the State Department. It was coordinated with the White House and coordinated with the NSC.
One more question on this. When they are accusing some of your foreign service nationals of being associated with the Gulen movement, do you see this as part and parcel of any effort to kind of make the U.S. tacitly supporting the Gulen movement? Because I know that they've been, they're trying to get him extradited to the United States. Do you think there's, a bigger issue involved than certain individuals and more of a U.S. trying to taint the U.S.
I'm not sure exactly what the Turkish government's motives were. Let me just be clear, we were disappointed in their actions. Being able to have close security cooperation, especially with a NATO partner, is incredibly important. And when they start arresting, detaining our people who are responsible for law enforcement coordination, that is a major concern of ours, and so that is why we took these steps.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
In July, the secretary, when he was in Istanbul, said, I think our relationship with Turkey, which has been under some stress for some time, I hope we are beginning to put that back on the mend. Does he stand by that statement, or is he concerned that the relationship is taking a turn?
Well, I think the secretary would like to see our relationship improve with Turkey, as we would with other countries. If you look at Russia, that's another country where we would like to improve the relationship. But right now, that is being called into question with the actions that the Turkish government took.
So that he would not characterize the relationship the way he did in July.
I don't know the answer to that, if he would characterize it exactly the same way, because the situation has changed somewhat with the arrest of 2 of our locally employed staff, plus summoning one of our other individuals is a huge concern of ours. Anything else on Turkey? Okay. Hi, Dave.
Hi. Obviously, there's been some tension between the Turkish government and the ambassador. Has anyone from this building been on the phone to the Turkish authorities? Has the secretary spoken to Erdogan or to Mr. Cavusoglu in the past few days?
I know we've had some conversations with the government of Turkey. The secretary, I do not believe, has spoken to his counterpart over there. Okay. Hey, Rich.
This represent Turks said that they talked on Saturday.
I don't believe we have a readout of anything. Rich?
Would you say that in the few months that the administration has been in power, that this is a low point in U.S.-Turkish relations?
I don't think it's my job to be able to characterize it that way. This is obviously a huge concern of ours, though. We've had some difficulties with members of the Turkish government this year. As you all well know, we've talked about that an awful lot, but I'm just not going to characterize it that way.
Also, the New York Times reported that there were a dozen American citizens who were swept up in these recent arrests in relation to the failed coup attempt from last year. Can you confirm?
I don't have any reports on that. I'm sorry. Okay. Anything else on Turkey? Okay, go ahead.
Part of the retaliation was basically to stop issuing visa to American citizens. Can you confirm that, and what does it mean technically? Because you can arrive at the airport and you can get a visa in the airport. Does that mean the Turkish authority can stop an American citizen from entering? Or if you have to go to the embassy, you can get?
My understanding is that this was all implemented yesterday. So some of this we are still figuring out. We have temporarily suspended visas for new visa applicants for Turkish nationals wanting to come to the United States. If somebody has a valid visa, they are certainly welcome to come over here under the terms of that visa. We're temporarily suspending it as we take a look at all of this. But I know the other way around, I'm just not exactly sure how that is working just yet. This was just put into effect. I believe it was just yesterday. So let me see what additional information I can give to you, okay?
This is an important.
Of course it is. It is a very important issue.
I don't know if I'm going to enter or not.
Yes, I understand. I agree. Let me see what I can get for you, okay? Okay. Hi.
Just to follow up on Dave's question, was there any plan to summon Turkish ambassador to the United
States, or has he been summoned? Because the reason I ask is, do you want to respond to the direct and blunt attack from President Erdogan toward Ambassador John Bass?
Do I want to respond to what?
To a direct and blunt attack from President Erdogan.
Well, to my knowledge, he only said that he wouldn't recognize our ambassador there, correct? Is there something beyond that?
He said that he will boycott, the Turkish official will boycott meetings with him, and he will not recognize him as an envoy.
I see. Okay. Well, I'm not going to respond to that, but I can say that Ambassador Bass has our full backing, not only here at the State Department, but also at the White House as well.
Can you say exactly how many hours he has left before he moves to Kabul? How many more hours in Ankara? Is it like 10, 20? Does he have any meetings with Turkish officials scheduled?
I'm not certain of that. If you talk to our folks in the SCA Bureau, I know that they are really looking forward to getting him to Afghanistan. So
which is going to be very soon, right?
My understanding is that it will
imminent.
My understanding is that it will be soon, but Ambassador Bass has done a terrific job in Turkey. Certainly a top posting. Okay, Ms. Ty.
Hi. So what does the U.S. expect Turkey to do to resume the visa services in Turkey? Are you expecting those two Turkish nationals, like local employees at the U.S. missions to be released? What is the expectation? What is the concrete expectation?
I think a good start would be to allow them access to their attorneys. To our knowledge, they have not had access to legal counsel as of this point. We have not seen any evidence that backs up what the Turkish government accuses them of. So that would be a good start. Okay.
Another question on Turkey?
Let's go ahead, Barbara.
I've got a question on Iran. Actually.
Oh, okay. Turkey. Okay. Turkey. Saeed, sorry.
I'm going to move on. So if somebody has a question.
Yeah, I have a question on Turkey. My name is Ragip Soylu. I work for Turkish newspaper Sabah. Nice to meet you finally. Turkish officials complain about the fact that the U.S. officials didn't communicate their decisions to the Turkish officials. And Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu had a phone call with Rex Tillerson on Saturday, according to his statement, the Turkish Çavuşoğlu.
I don't have a readout of that conversation.
The Turkish officials tells me that the Secretary Tillerson didn't tell them that they were going to suspend the visa services in Turkey in advance. And also Turkish President Erdogan today said that they had hardship to reach American officials, top officials in Washington. I know that it was Columbus Day yesterday, but it's kind of awkward, I guess, for everyone that Turkish officials complain about the fact that they can't communicate with the American officials?
Well, I know there have certainly been calls that have gone back and forth, not only between Washington and Turkey, but also our folks on the ground in Turkey. So that I can tell you, and I can assure you that some of those calls and conversations have certainly taken place.
But
I'll leave it at that.
But did you let Turkish officials know before the...
I don't have a readout of anyone's particular conversation in front of me right now, so I can't answer that question. If I can get you an answer for that, I certainly will. Okay, let's
back to the foreign minister.
I can't. I don't recall that. I don't recall. I'll check on that. Double check on that. Okay, Saeed, go right ahead. Yeah.
An Israeli issue over the weekend.
All right, everybody, we will now be going to the East Room of the White House, where President Trump is going to honor the Stanley Cup champions, Pittsburgh Penguins.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Trump, accompanied by Mr. Mario Lemieux and Mr. Ron Burkle.
By the way, everybody wanted to be here today, and I know why. Well, thank you all very much for being here, and before we get started, I want to say a few words to the people of California, great state, especially with those in NAFTA. Napa has been hit so hard, and Sonoma, as they deal with the tragic loss of life and property to devastating wildfires. I spoke with Governor Brown last night to let him know that the federal government will stand with the people of California, and we will be there for you in this time of terrible tragedy and need. And I just want to pay my warmest respects. They're going through a lot. We also continue to pray for those grieving and wounded after the mass shooting attack in Las Vegas, and we stand in solidarity with those suffering in the aftermath of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. And thank you very much. We have to never forget. To the many members of Congress who join us here today, we have you have many fans out here, folks. You know that, right? A lot of fans. Not all from Pennsylvania, too, if you can believe it. They are a lot of fans. Members of my administration and distinguished guests, please join me in welcoming to the White House the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not only are the Penguins the first team in the National Hockey League, literally in nearly 20 years, to be repeat champions, you also captured the Cup in 3 out of the last 9 seasons. That's pretty amazing, because I know the competition is tough. Is it tough? Pretty tough, right? Not for you guys, it's not so tough. Over the last couple of months, the New England Patriots, the Chicago Cubs, and the NCAA champion Clemson Tigers football have all visited the White House to celebrate their great victories. It's been an honor to have them all here. Now I want to proudly welcome the Pittsburgh Penguins owners. First of all, he's a friend of mine for a long time. He's a great, great negotiator. Ron, how about negotiating some of our horrible trade deals that they've made over there? Here's what I want. I want to get him. Oh, I would love to have Ron Burkle. And it's great to have you, Ron. But I really mean that. If you want to get involved in negotiating NAFTA, I like it. Because we're renegotiating NAFTA, Ron. Of course, he may not like that, because maybe he's on the other side. That's what's happening. That's why it's so hard to redo these trade deals, because there's so many other people. You're not on the other side of NAFTA, Ron, are you?
I am not.
And one of the all-time greats, and by the way, a really great golfer, too, Mario Lemieux, Super Mario. And he hits that ball a long way. To General Manager Jim Rutherford and Coach Mike Sullivan, I know you have a really big, it's an early season matchup tomorrow night against the rival Washington Capitals. Are they tough, Washington Capitals? What do you think? Are they tough, huh? So I want to thank you for coming today. But for us, this is really a truly great group of world champions. That's what they are. They're world champions. We have to start with somebody that I've been watching for a long time because I saw him when he was just about as young as you can get going into the NHL. Sidney Crosby. Where's Sidney? This guy. Man, can you play? Sidney, do you know how to win or what? Look at him, he's shy. Do you know how to win or what? Great. Great job. What a job you've done. 44 goals last season, 89 points in all, and once again, the recipient of the Conn Smythe Trophy. And Sidney, you built an incredible legacy in Pittsburgh, and congratulations. Keep it going. Fantastic. Before it's all said and done, you might, frankly, you know, they're telling me this. Has he outdone you yet, Mario? I don't know. He's getting close, isn't he? You know, they have, you might even outdo him. I don't know. He's got to be awfully close, right? I think he's done it all. Well, Mario is Mario. And Sidney, congratulations. And Sidney's not the only star that shined for the Pens last year. Evgeny Malkin. Where's his Jenny? Where is it? Looks like he's a basketball player. Big guy, strong, tough. Served as the other half of the two-headed monster. They call it the two-headed monster. That scored a combined total of 77 goals. Way to go, fellas. Great. That's fantastic. Fantastic. Phil Kessel. Where's Phil? Phil. Come on, Phil. Come on. Come on. Get over here, Phil. These guys don't want to be politicians. Like, they shouldn't be. Don't be a politician, Phil. Pretty good, right? Phil led the team in assists. Although I hear his sister Amanda may be the best hockey player in the family. Is that possible? You know what? I doubt it, okay? But I hear she's really good. Matt Murray stewarded 32 wins as goaltender and is the first goalie in league history to win the Stanley Cup championship game in each of his first 2 years. Where's Matt? Yeah. I assume you have very good reflexes, right? Have you had good reflexes from day one?
I like to think so,
yeah. Huh? Yeah. Hey, you better have, right? Way to go, Matt. We expect big things again this year out of Matt, as he will be taking on an even greater role this season between the pipes. Connor Sheary, Jake Grunzel. Where's Jake and Connor? Where are they? Come here. Hello. Way to go, fellas. Oh, what a group. And Justin Schultz also had really big years as some of the young upcoming stars of this team. It's got a team that's tremendous future. That's what I'm hearing. Despite being sidelined to injury, Chris Letang used his experience to help younger players. Where's Chris? Where's Chris? Well, you look pretty young to me. What do you mean younger players? I mean, they get younger than you? You look it's a very handsome group of people. In fact, I don't like standing in front of them. First thing you know, we always like unattractive teams, right? And devised strategies that spurred the Pens onto a really incredible victory. I'm pleased to report that the Tanger, right? Tanger is healthy and back on the ice this season where he belongs. Going to be a great season for you. Yet many of the players really might agree that the biggest MVPs was your incredible, loyal fans. The Pens faithful packed the arenas for every single game, cheering Pittsburgh's boys of winter all the way. Great fans, great state, great place. In fact, every one of the Penguins' home games for the past 10 straight years has been very much to Ron Burkle's happiness. Sold out, right, Ron? Sold out. So while you're dominant on the ice, the heart of the organization and its commitment to Pittsburgh shines just as brightly off the ice. The Pittsburgh Penguins Foundation supports a number of great causes serving young people. Over $1 million in grants were awarded to local charities last season. The annual food drive distributes thousands and thousands of pounds of food and tens of thousands of dollars to local community food banks. Since 2010, the Pittsburgh Penguins Foundation has also worked with the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center Sports Medicine to combat concussions in young athletes. Just last week, the Pens pledged 2 donations of $25,000 each toward relief efforts in Puerto Rico in a support of the victims and the first responders of the terrible attack in Las Vegas. They have worked so hard, the police, the first responders, for everything, whether it was in Texas or in Florida or Louisiana or Puerto Rico or the U.S. Virgin Islands, or that horrible, horrible situation caused by a very demented, sick person in Las Vegas. The police, every one of them, first responders, they've been incredible. They've been absolutely incredible. So we should give them a hand, okay? Just as much as your 5 Stanley Cup wins, your generosity has shown the true character of this incredible organization. You are true champions and incredible patriots. Now, with the hockey season again underway, I know you're ready to make yet another run at the Cup. The NHL has not seen a three-peat in a generation, but I know you are ready for the challenge. I'm going to be watching so closely because do you think you're going to be back here next year? I think so, right? I have a feeling. I've been watching them. I go to those Ranger games, and you do a lot of bad damage to our Ranger team. Boy, oh boy, you do damage. But that's the way you want to do it. It's called winning, right, Sydney? Called winning. I know the Capitals will be looking for payback tomorrow night, so we will let you get back to practice. I just, again, want to congratulate this incredible franchise on its so many victories. You embody the values of dedication, discipline, and hard work. To every young American watching today, we encourage you to always strive to be your best, to do your best, and to give your all. We wish all the best of luck this season. You're going to have a great season. The coach is telling me your team is going to be better than ever. So let's go, Pens. Thank you all. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
All right, everybody, news now. We'll be taking an afternoon break. We will be back a little bit later.